OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, you're very welcome along. It's Monday morning. It's myself here. It's Shane there.
Good morning. How are things?
And we also have Nathan with us.
Morning, lads.
Oh yeah, everybody's full of the joys. Quick off the mark this morning. We're all slightly distracted because the golf is on in the background. Rory McIlroy started the day with a 3-stroke lead. It's down to 1, and he's being stalked by Patrick Reed. Patrick Reed might feature in the show this morning. Mm-hmm. Little spoiler alert there. That's what they call a tease in the business. We might be talking about Patrick Reed today again, but that's what he wants. Sometimes I feel like if we just didn't talk about Patrick Reed, perhaps he would disappear.
Yeah, maybe he doesn't exist.
Maybe he's we would have to create a supervillain in the mould of Patrick Reed to entertain ourselves. And maybe he's like a fictional character, one of those 3D printed human beings that has come into being. Anyway, it is 7:31. There's loads for us to talk about this morning. If there's anything you want us to talk about, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. You can always leave a comment on the YouTube stream as well. Here's what's going up between now and 10 o'clock. Mark Lawrenson's going to join us at 10 past 8. Alan Quinlan's going to join us at 8:30. We've got Jenny Claffey talking tennis, and we have Anthony Moyles talking GAA at around about 9:15 this morning. We'll play some clips from the paper review at 9:30. The golf going into its 4th day, or its 5th day, Nathan. I'm a big fan of this, I have to say. Right.
Yeah, I do like a Monday finish, though maybe it's just the profession we work in where we can manage to watch that little bit of golf on a Monday. If you're stuck in the office and you got the Sky Go on the sly in the corner, maybe it's a little bit more difficult. It's always better as well when Rory McIlroy's in contention and top of the leaderboard, and he's sort of like Jon Snow trying to fight off the White Walkers. He's there with his big sword saying, Patrick Reed, come at me. Ian Poulter, come at me. Live Golf, come at me. It couldn't have been set up any better in terms of drama and everything that's gone on over the past year, with McIlroy being the head of good in golf and Liv on the other side, and this one of the few events where they're all in the field together, and Patrick Reed has turned up and is playing well and has got himself somehow to the top of that leaderboard. Ian Poulter is showing some form again. It'll be fascinating to see what McIlroy's post-round interview is if he wins this tournament. You think back to Canada and that little dig he had at Greg Norman. Does he just take his victory, or does he have a little bit of a pop at Reed and Poulter and the Liv guys?
He has to have a pop. I had a moment yesterday, lads, speaking of the viewing of it, where I woke up at about, I don't know what time I woke up yesterday, but I was like, quickly, get upstairs. There's only 6-7 holes left of the final round in Dubai. For the entire duration of the last 6-7 holes, I thought McIlroy was about to win the tournament. I had forgotten. So it took me, when McIlroy went into the water on the last, and I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. He's grand, he has it, he's a 3 or 4 stroke lead. And it was only when he was on the green putting to finish his final round that I realised, oh crap, they actually
lost a day here.
Yeah, lost a day. So I'd totally forgotten. But
one of the joys of being in your 20s.
Yeah, maybe. Although I'm still doing dry January, so I didn't even have that to blame.
All right,
Ger,
okay.
So yeah.
If you are just waking up this morning, Patrick Mahomes will be in the Super Bowl against the Philadelphia Eagles in a fortnight's time. And was there anything else that happened overnight late? Oh, Katie McCabe has been linked with Chelsea. Arsenal have apparently turned down the move. This is a big move, Nathan, if she can get it.
If she can get it, if she wants it. The line that stood out was that she would be interested in a move. Obviously, Emma Hayes is the Chelsea manager. Chelsea are the favourites to win the league. It would still be quite a shock, because the way the women's game has developed, this sort of transfer doesn't always happen, and there's certainly no recent example of a player leaving Arsenal to go to Chelsea, but it shows the value that Chelsea put in Katie McCabe. It'd be absolutely fascinating if Katie tries to push this through over the next few days. I know Arsenal were playing at the weekend in the Cup and had a comfortable victory, but you did wonder. There was a big game against Chelsea where she was left out just a couple of weeks ago and she was on the bench. Maybe that has an impact as well on what Katie McCabe is thinking. But yeah, it's really, really interesting to see if Ireland's best player was to leave the team second in the league to go and move to the team that are the champions.
Yeah. big move for her, big opportunity for her, and a real sign at the level that she's operating at the moment. It's 7:35 this morning. First couple of comments in. Disgraceful tackle on Evan Ferguson. How did Liverpool finish the game with 11 from Jared O'Connell and Chris Cal? Oh, don't worry. That's going to feature in this week's episode of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. That performances was just lacked that intensity.
Boom. Right. The Gillette Labs Performance Rankings. Every Sunday evening we put a little box up on Instagram, on our Instagram stories, and you can tell us who you think should be in the red, in the amber. We struggle with the amber. And sometimes we struggle with the green. Not this week, though. No struggles this week.
No, it's not. You know what? Some of the busy weeks, it can be a struggle because you don't know what to put in and what to leave out. But I think we'll start with, in the red, Fabinho. One of the worst cameos of all time. Probably the worst cameo since Donald Trump in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York. He was horrific when he came on and didn't add anything to Liverpool's midfield. And then there was the tackle, which I've clearly got the YouTube commenters already talking this morning, lads. I mean, if VAR have one job, they did it wrong yesterday. Because if there's ever an example of when you need to upgrade a yellow card to a red card in Stockley Park, that was it. It was a horrendous tackle. I know, Nathan, you were there, and we saw the images from your very phone of Per Evan limping out of the stadium on his crutches. Really hope it's not a bad injury. I suppose we'll have to wait and see based off a scan today. Klopp's comments, and I have them in front of me here, were quite interesting. He said, first of all, he didn't see the tackle. But then he expanded on the tackle. He said,
hear this.
There was no dynamic on it.
We can hear this.
Oh, sorry, we have the clip.
Yeah.
Let's listen.
The Fabinho challenge was no dynamic in, but I didn't just saw it once, not the second time. I think with dynamic, we can talk about the red card. It was more lying, and then he hit him. Not cool. Ibu, I didn't really see in the moment, and Robbo, it's late in the game. It's nothing to do with falling apart. It's frustration. It's not right to do it. Well, against us, teams get constantly yellow cards usually, and nobody asks the opposition these questions. But for us, we are not used to that. We don't concede usually yellow cards. But imagine a boys wouldn't react at all. I don't like it. I don't think that's the right way to do it, and I have to look it twice or maybe 3 times to judge it a little bit better. But in the end, I'm pretty sure your assessment or what you made of it is not right, but it can be still your opinion, of course.
We didn't hear the question there, but presumably the question was, you should have got a red card, right?
And you'd imagine so.
Yeah, Klopp is always going to defend his players. He always defends his players, win or lose after every game. But listen, there's no question. It had to be a red card. When you saw it first, it looked a little bit clumsy. But the second you look on the replay, and you can see why the referee maybe thought initially a yellow card, he's sort of clipped the back of his heel. Once you look at a replay, it's clear that this is an incredibly dangerous tackle. The raking down, the pushing through at the back of the ankle, and the damage that it has done to Evan Ferguson. It has to be a red card. And again, it's one of those decisions that makes you wonder, what is the point of VAR? I think Andy Robertson was slightly different. I'm not quite sure it was a red, but like Fabinho was the most nailed on red. And Fabinho knew.
His reaction, he was like, oh, what have I done?
I think Fabinho went in, and it was probably clumsy at first, and then he knew that the way he had caught him, players know instantly in a split second the damage that they can do, and the reaction and the awkwardness of Evan Ferguson's fall. And yeah, it was a really, really bad end to what up to that had been a very entertaining game. And you know, I left the Amex yesterday feeling pretty down because, you know, watching Evan Ferguson go out on crutches, like today is a big day in Evan Ferguson's career. What that scan shows up and how long he's going to be out for. I know there was a feeling leaving the stadium last night that they were quite hopeful that it wouldn't be an ACL and that it would be a lesser thing than that. He seemed to have a knee brace on. You know, we're 8 weeks today away from France. It's hard to see how he gets himself back in time and plays enough football ahead of that, but hopefully it's just some bruising, and it was the instant reaction and the pain of the tackle. But it certainly seemed to be more a knee problem for Ferguson than it was an ankle issue with the way and the awkwardness of the fall. And, you know, after playing so well again yesterday, probably should have scored, but his overall all-round game, you kind of have to remind yourself, this is an 18-year-old kid out there. He looks and he fits in so well against, Liverpool played a lot better yesterday than they did 2 weeks ago. He's alongside Danny Welbeck up front, England international Premier League winner, and there was no question when they were changing the striker, it was going to be Welbeck who would come off first, because Ferguson had a much greater impact. And even the 10 minutes before he came off, where Liverpool were starting to get a little bit of control and it was quite scrappy in midfield. They brought on Henderson, they brought on Fabinho. He just sat back into the midfield, desperate to get on the ball all the time, little touches, getting himself involved. Not the performance I was expecting from him. I sort of thought, against Liverpool, they might try and sit him off the shoulder of the defender, try and stretch the defence. This was all about playing in a deeper role, getting himself involved in the game, being a more creative force. And then he has the 2 chances. The first half one, he really has to score. He needs to hit the first time. The second one, he couldn't have done much more. But to go from that and watching that performance for 80 minutes and thinking, Stephen Kenny, as far as I know, was there yesterday. He has to be looking at that going, this is exactly what we'll come up with against France. In fact, he might come up against one of these centre-halves in Canate against France. He's not going to be able to play off the shoulder. I'll need him dropping deep to get involved against France. And he was able to do it so brilliantly. And to finish then on crutches and, a potentially very serious knee injury, it's just devastating, I think, for him and for all Irish fans.
I had assumed it was... I hadn't even thought about the knee thing. This is kind of... very depressing. I had actually not considered that was going to be an issue this morning, that it was more soreness, Achilles, and that can obviously bring its own, if the Achilles is ruptured or whatever, that's a fairly horrific injury. But I hadn't thought about the possibility even of an ACL. So that is in the potential circle of outcome here.
It's certainly, it looked like a knee injury, and the talk afterwards was that it was a knee injury. Now, obviously when I saw him walking past was probably half an hour after the game. So I'd imagine there was quite a bit of swelling there, and I have to wait for that to go down before they can have the scan. I'm sure they'll have it as quickly as possible. Maybe it won't even be today, but that was the concern, that it would be a serious knee injury, far more than I was the same as you. Obviously, watching it initially, you look at the ankle and think, maybe the ankle was quite sore with the way it went down. Maybe it was ligaments in the ankle. There is that piece where he walks around the pitch and he's getting the ovation, and unfortunately, quite often it is a ligament injury when you see that the player is able to walk initially. And it's later that they find the full effects of it. But look, it's too early to say that it's anything quite that serious. And look, anything less than that, he could be back in a month, 4 or 5 weeks. Or maybe it's just severe bruising and he's going to be just fine and he'll be back. And, Roberto De Zerbi was saying in the press conference yesterday that even he's been very surprised as to how good Evan Ferguson has been since he threw him in for the half an hour against Arsenal. Sort of forgets himself that he's 18 years of age. So, yeah, it's an important couple of days for Evan Ferguson, having got his way into the team. He was been asked about Undav, who was a sub yesterday, who came on from, would he go out on loan? Maybe he doesn't go on loan if Ferguson's going to be out for a little while. So these are the little sliding doors moments that can happen in your career. But look, whatever happens, he'll come back and he's going to go on, and you expect to become a big player for club and for country.
Yeah, there was a huge
this
piece,
was his time.
A huge piece on Saturday in the London Times about Ferguson and the making of him and his time as a kid in Dublin, growing up and all that sort of stuff. And still that line about, hey, he can still play for England. I presume that's just a headline grabber, try and make everybody interested. Why am I reading about this 18-year-old? Oh, because he might play for England. Is that?
I think it definitely felt that way. I was desperately trying to find the article just in case there was a bit of depth to that, but I think it was just pointing out that he is eligible to play for England. There's never been any suggestion at all that he would.
We've been heard once before, so
Ireland.
we're all just as a collective.
Yeah, but listen, Evan Ferguson was born in Ireland. He's lived up in Bettystown all his life, so I suspect that was to make it more interesting for the English audience.
The fact that he is a much fouled player, like you even saw Canate having a piece out of him as well and got a yellow card. Like, it's just the nature of the position, I guess, holding the ball up, and you're going to get chopped from behind quite often. And he holds the ball up so well. And as you say, Nathan, he had a number of flicks in the match where you're like, this guy doesn't lose the ball too often.
So we're saying he's more Harry Kane than Lewandowski. Is that what we're getting to?
In the article yesterday, it said he modelled his game more than Lewandowski. I think against Liverpool, they were looking for something else from him. Like, you would hope he can do both, but you're right. Like, Canate is a strong man, and he held him off twice, and that's why he was fouled, because when he got the ball, his first thing was to take the contact from the player to make himself as big as he possibly could, and they have a little bit of a nibble at him, and he'd turn his back, he'd shield the ball brilliantly. So if he can drop back, because again, I think we've got to be honest here, for international football, you're going to probably need that from
There'll be a lot of
an
that,
Ireland number 9 in the current system. So
well, it means you can play him with any of the other Irish strikers who we have. He can play with Adam Ida, he can play with Troy Parrott, he can play with Michael Obafemi. Like you can now have our 3 at the back and 2 up front, and he can drop deep or he can play up top, and that's a brilliant flexibility built in, as you say, from an 18-year-old for the rest of his career. Let's fingers crossed that this is the worst injury he ever gets.
Absolutely. Now, I think, again, for those games where you're playing, can we call anyone lesser opposition in international football right now, where you want to play him and an Obafemi up front together. I think he has that ability. He still has a bit to go. In a way, he almost seemed reticent to get in the area at times, and De Zerbi touched on that as well, that his movement off the ball just needs a little bit of fine-tuning as to when he gets in the area, make sure he's desperate to get in there and there's a bit more movement. Like, look, I'm watching him and you're kind of thinking, what would Erling Haaland do in this situation? And those little darting runs that Haaland makes all the time, he's not quite doing that. But twice in the 6-yard box, the edge of it, he found himself in the perfect position at exactly the right time. So he clearly has that little bit of know-how to find himself there. And it's such a shame he didn't get that goal early on yesterday to give Brighton the lead. But Everton, like he's not long gone 18. He's 18 years of age. Yeah. And he's playing against the Liverpool team. We're certainly a lot better than they were the last time they played Brighton a couple of weeks ago. And in no way would you have said this guy is a kid. Like, he still only played one full 90 minutes of senior football, and that was in the Carabao Cup against Middlesbrough. He hasn't played another 90 minutes of senior football yet. So let's hope that comes very, very soon. But that's the inexperience of the player, and that wasn't the player that we saw out on the pitch yesterday.
Brandon Pank says, sums up Fabinho this season. Brian says, Jordan Henderson's still playing for a team who wants to win things. He's been finished for nearly 2 years, yet Klopp is still giving him a minute. Liverpool's performance gets worse every time he's on. Jack Nulty asks, do you think Klopp could be sacked this season? Headline in the back of all the English papers are picking up on Andy Robertson's comments. Bad to worse. A new low in the FA Cup. I mean, look, it's the FA Cup. It's obviously, it was an opportunity for them to win a trophy. They're clearly not going to win the Premier League this season. They're not out of the other ones. Very tricky draw in the Champions League. So maybe they were desperate for a victory in that game. Surely there's not a world that exists in all of the many simulations in which Jurgen Klopp gets fired.
No, there's no world in which that happens this season. They've lost 9 games now in all competitions, and while there were moments yesterday where they looked, I wouldn't even say anywhere back to their best, where they looked like they had a bit of energy about them, at least. Like, this was a Brighton team missing Caicedo in the middle of midfield. Just sold Leandro Trossard, and Brighton were the better team still for large parts of that game. They looked completely lost. Like the Liverpool that we saw towards the back end of last season, that were winning the couple of cups, they were with 20 minutes to go in the Premier League season, they thought one more goal probably wins them the league. Like, that relentless intensity that you just took for granted that was in every game. It's not there. And Fabinho is the prime example of that. And look, I think I brought it up right at the start of the season, that game against Crystal Palace where he misses the tackle. He never missed the tackle. Never missed a tackle for 3 or 4 years. And now he's missing tackles and he's loose and he's late. And you're right, Shane, he came on yesterday and he didn't. You're expecting him and Henderson to make the impact. I thought Henderson did all right when he came on, but like the midfield, and he's taking off a teenager and Fabinho's lessening the quality in the middle of the pitch. So they need to do something rapidly. It doesn't look as though they're going to do anything over the next 48 hours in terms of signing a midfielder, and it'll be the second time in 3 seasons that their season probably just ends up petering out unless they can just get a little bit of momentum somehow and get into the fight for the top 4. But there's nothing we've seen since the return from the World Cup that they're just going to spark into life. It's not there. There's no fear factor either. Like, I was even watching, I guess we were all on Evan Ferguson watch yesterday in some ways. You obviously got it up close and personal, Nathan, but even from the tip-off at the very start of the match, he's standing on the halfway line, standing with Mo Salah, I think, and they're having a bit of a conversation. And Salah had this aura a couple of years ago, and now all of a sudden, even when the game kicks off, Ferguson straight away stops the conversation with Salah, runs straight away to kind of charge down the Liverpool defence. We have Fabinho and Liverpool in the red, but realistically it should be the VAR in the red and the officials, because as you said, Ger, what's the point? What's the point in having VAR if the likes of that foul isn't upgraded? Alright, we will come back to this with Mark Lawrenson in not too long. A quick update in the golf. McIlroy still a stroke clear. Reid and Herbert now 14 under. McIlroy's on 15 under. Reid has finished his front 9. Herbert's through 11. McIlroy is just on the 9th.
and can do with an old birdie, just to remind everybody that he's not going to be purely playing defence today. Let's move on. Patrick Reed is also in the red.
Well, he is indeed. Well, he usually is in the red, but we're going to stick with the golf because, as we were watching yesterday...
We're just going to make a public service announcement here. We're going to be very careful not to get sued by Patrick Reed because he's obviously...
litigious individual.
Yeah, and as is his right.
Yeah.
If someone's done wrong by you, you got to get out there and defend your name. All that... all that honour that you've built up over the years, you've got to make sure that no one is trying to take away anything from that.
That's fair. Yeah, we accept crappy quiz questions to Off the Ball Marconi House, but we prefer not to get subpoenas to the door if we can avoid it. So Patrick Reed, it was T-Gate, but then it became Tree-Gate yesterday. This is a boy who cried wolf scenario, because a lot of people were saying this incident, maybe we should give Patrick Reed the benefit of the doubt. For anyone who missed it, DP World Tour issues a statement to clarify a rules scenario involving Reed, courting controversy again at the tournament in front of us, the Dubai Desert Classic. So he takes a penalty drop on the 17th hole of his third round yesterday after identifying his ball by specific markings when lodged up a tree. Now, he says without that identification, Reed would have had to return to the tee to play his third shot. Social media, of course, gets active when this footage emerges, which appears to show Reed's ball landing in a different tree to the one he took the drop beside. Reed saying after the round, he was 100% sure he had seen his own ball with the assistance of binoculars. He says, I would have gone back to the tee if I was not 100%, escaping with a bogey 5 en route to his 69, which left him in contention, of course, and we see today the benefit of that. Lack of a dropped shot on that particular hole. The tour didn't deny Reed could have dropped from the wrong tee, but seemed to assume responsibility, saying 2 on-course referees and several marshals identified with Reed his ball that had become lodged. Who knows what's going on here, whether Reed's telling the truth or not, but what happened was takes a drop from beside the tree, social media burst into life, and the rest is history. Patrick Reed is the bad boy again. You're watching this, Nathan?
His reputation doesn't help him in this scenario, and I've watched about 8 different replays of various commentators breaking it down in slow motion to show that of the three trees that are there, Patrick Reed's ball clearly goes in the first one, yet he found his ball in the third one, which is about 7-8 yards to the right of the ball that he says he saw his ball in. Now, there is the possibility that it hit that first tree and popped up into the second tree, and that he's correct.
They call this the magic bullet theory.
Defying
there
physics.
There is
back
also
and to the left. Back and to the left.
When you look at that tree, so these are palm trees, and when they zoomed in the TV camera, there's 6-7 balls up there, even then that little shot alone. So this is a popular spot where your ball ends up getting stuck, and he plays a very popular brand of golf ball. Now, his markings are also very similar to what a lot of people would have. Now, he has a little red mark that maybe not every golfer, but he has that straight line as well, and he says it's an arrow
in the red this morning,
on the ball. So he claims that he saw the ball. Now, he also claims, I think, that it felt like the referee made the decision. So he described to the referee what the ball was like, says, I can see it. And the referee goes, well, that's what that sort of ball is. Listen, I think the referee's in a no-win situation. If he says, this is what my ball looks like, and there's one of them up there, well, then fair enough. But as I say, there were a lot of golf balls in that tree.
A lot.
I do buy the distinctive markings thing, though. Like, everybody has to say, they don't really. Everybody has a slightly distinctive. It's not quite a snowflake or a fingerprint, but there's definitely, so not everybody will have seen this, but you go to the range and the caddies are constantly marking the ball to make sure that, because this is going to happen all the time, the landing zone for all the world's best golfers is very small area. It's not that, and as you say, they all play roughly the same brand of ball, so they are pretty good about trying to make sure that no one's going to end up playing their ball, because that's a catastrophic mistake that could cost them in a major tournament. So I do buy the bit where he says, yeah, now that's my ball because it's got this, and this, and can you see this, and this, and then, so there's a little bit of wiggle room here for me to think that for once Patrick Reed is not the villain we're making him out to be.
Oh, you're going soft. You're going soft,
No, the problem for Patrick Reed is that there's no wiggle room with Patrick Reed because he has such a reputation. And you're right. Did anybody come over to him and say, actually, that ball didn't hit that tree? We're looking several hours afterwards, people pointing out it wasn't in that tree. And if he assumes his ball's in that tree and there's markings that are either the same or very similar, well then maybe he's perfectly entitled Obviously, the video footage shows that it's highly unlikely.
Why is the video footage emerging hours later as opposed to in real time? Like, it's not as if they don't have a gazillion people working and the prize money is so rich and the tour company, they've invested so much money in the TV. I don't really understand why there isn't...
Well, I think... even on the footage, maybe the referee and it has happened from time to time where radar will be down on the edge of the fairway and somebody they'll be looking for a ball and somebody will shout at them and go, actually it looks like it's about 10 yards further left on the TV footage. Like the TV footage, is it conclusive? Like, is it beyond the realms of possibility that the ball hits the tree and pops out and pops up? Like, it's traveling at a rate of knots and it goes out of picture. Perhaps
it's not. You're right. Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. It's totally true. Nathan,
but this is, and look, Patrick Reed, I'm sure, will address this afterwards. But when you have that reputation, it means everybody is ready for the pile-on. But look, if you're wondering what to do for the next couple of hours, you've got Rory McIlroy one shot clear of Patrick Reed, which even without all of this, what a subtext that was with European Tour, PGA Tour against Live Golf. This is good Monday morning viewing.
Without Teagate, which started the week, where Patrick Reed threw a tee at Rory McIlroy like a petulant child, and then accused McIlroy of being a petulant child. Notwithstanding the fact that Patrick Reed did destroy him in the Masters when they were up against each other a couple of years ago. So, McIlroy needs to see this out just for his own, because they will come up against each other again in a major down the stretch.
They will. Rory's never won on the first start of the year. Listen, I don't think what happens here will affect Reed, McIlroy. I think Rory's going to contend in a lot of majors. I don't think Patrick Reed has that level of consistency. But there'll be a bit of fire in Rory's belly.
Never give a sucker an even break. You gotta
There'll be a lot of fire in Rory's belly today.
3-stroke
he hasn't showed it. He's playing just very steady golf at the moment. Power.
All right, Nathan, good stuff. Thanks very much. The footage that Nathan had, of course, is available to view from the Amex yesterday. Unfortunately, it is of Evan Ferguson on a crutch and with what appears to be a knee brace as well. You can check it out on his Twitter and on our Twitter at Off The Ball. Rory McIlroy's a stroke clear. We'll keep you up to date on how that's going. That's the red, the amber.
Yes, the amber, as you say, it's a difficult one to pick, but for anyone in the comments, let us know if you saw this game as well, because I was watching an FA Cup Classic yesterday evening.
Is the FA Cup back?
Oh, it is completely back.
What we're saying, that Man United and Alex Ferguson screwed the FA Cup by, pulling out of it 25 years ago.
Long time ago,
Everybody kind of took that as their signal for this doesn't really matter. But it seems like everybody's picking their best teams largely, or very strong teams anyway.
Yeah.
And the games have been pretty good. The shocks have been off the charts. Is it back?
Teams want trophies, Ger. Teams want trophies, as it turns out. Eric Ten Hag being one of them, because United's team, I heard one of the Reading players speaking after the match at the weekend, where he was saying, we were waiting to see the United team that was dropped for the Old Trafford match, and we were thinking, he's going to put out a weakened team.
He did not.
He did not.
No, he did not.
They were absolutely buzzing, to be fair, because they wanted to play the United best players. But I think it is back. I think there's a bit of excitement about it. We almost had magic at the Wrexham Racecourse ground. It just didn't happen, Ger.
Birdie time. Rory McIlroy goes to 16 under.
16 under?
Yeah.
Birdie. I mean, 8 birdies yesterday, so...
His first of the front nine on the 9th.
Good time to get it.
Yeah.
2-shot lead. The game yesterday, Wrexham 3, Sheffield United 3. For anyone watching this, it was a Hollywood Cup tie, because you had Ryan Reynolds in the audience, in the crowd. Camera obviously panning to him constantly and consistently. Rob McElhenney was in Philadelphia, of course, for his Eagles team. He apparently was watching the game at the tailgate of the Eagles match. There's a tweet from Ryan Reynolds we have there. When Rob McElhenney and I got into this, it all felt so impossible. But impossible is Wrexham's favourite colour. That was one of the most exciting things I've ever seen. Thank you, each and every Wrexham supporter who came out and aimed your heart at that pitch tonight. There was that strange, funny coming together of Ryan Reynolds, Alan Shearer and Gary Lineker before the game on television, where they did an interview. And Reynolds was very good. He was kind of talking about the whole dream, saying in 10 years' time the plan is and always has been the Premier League. Still thinks it's possible. And fair play to them. They're a National League at the moment. They're fairly certain, you'd imagine, at the moment of promotion for the National League. They're flying. Their home form is brilliant. They haven't lost a game at home all season, I don't think. So they're playing really, really good football. Tom O'Connor as well, I should mention him. He's a lad from the Wexford-Kilkenny border. Loved his hurling growing up. He's 23 or so at this stage. He's Irish under 19 and 21 international. A former teammate at underage level with Ireland of John Egan's.
Right.
And Egan, of course, scoring the 95th minute equaliser. Tom O'Connor scored the second goal for Wrexham to put them 2-1 ahead. They went 3-2 ahead late on. And you're thinking this is it. And then John Egan, from a corner, bundles in a goal to snatch victory from Per Wrexham, and it's a replay at Bramall Lane to come. So not saying they can't get over the line in the replay, but last night felt, especially with 20 minutes left, Sheffield United went down to 10 men. It just felt like the time was there for them.
Although, just think of the content. Just think of the content. That's
it's content, yeah. I mean, I think they announced on Friday they'd sold 24,000 replica shirts so far this season, Wrexham. So, I mean, Netflix works.
Nearly as much as Bose.
Nearly as much as Bose and the Bob, what is it?
Bob Marley.
Yeah, I was going to say Bob Dylan, but Bob Dylan's not on the Bohemian shirts. He's next. But it was just one of those proper old school cup ties. Even the red card, Ger, was a little circle red card.
All right, wow.
So, I mean, this felt old school.
That's just for the cameras?
I hope so.
Okay, so as we say, amber is tricky because you could easily put that in the green.
Yeah, they just didn't get over
that
line.
being back. But they've got another bite at the cherry, and we'll see if they can make these standings again. I've no doubt they will over the years. Right, in green.
Yes, in green.
A lot of people already given out. No mention of Roscommon. Where are the Rossies? You didn't even mention them in the rankings last week. Rubbing a bit of salt in the wound, says Darren McAlinden. What about Rory Beggan and his disaster kick out to Tiernan Kelly? I've lost the Roscommon. David Clark. Again, Roscommon did not even get a mention in the rankings last week. Brushed over and probably had performance of the weekend.
Look, we're getting to them. They obviously deserve to be in the green, don't they? I, for one, am delighted that the league was back. Made my way to Castleblaney on Saturday night under the lights at Mary's Park for Monaghan versus Armagh. Result didn't go Monaghan's way, as one of the commenters points out. Just before half time, Rory Beggan kicks a kick out straight to Armagh's full forward Tiernan Kelly and kicks it towards goal. Rory nearly stops it on the line, but it bundles in. Just one of those days for Monaghan.
You were being kind there. I think if Rory had that whole thing over again.
He should have stopped it on the line as well.
He should have stopped it on the line.
Yeah, as well as the bad kick out. So
as he knows. Yeah.
One of those moments that just wasn't great for Rory or Monaghan. Jack McCarran pulled up injured within the first 50 seconds for Monaghan as well. I mean, Conor McManus and the two Hughes brothers, Kieran and Darren, weren't involved, so they're to come back in. It's Kerry away from Monaghan next weekend, and all of a sudden you're looking at that fixture going, okay, probably need to win.
A bitter Kerry team as well, who feel like they were robbed up in Donegal.
I was watching this game.
Although I think, did they not have a point that was a bit dodgy at one stage as well? Jack O'Connor was not very happy with it.
Well, yeah, O'Connor wasn't happy with the Donegal point in the first half from, was it Cialan McGonigal, young lad on his debut, man of the match, scored 3 points for Donegal. He was brilliant. But his second point of those appeared to go wide, certainly from the angle of the stands and the management teams. This ball appears to go wide. It was waved over straight away. But then the sideline official queried it with the referee. The referee goes over to the umpires and they still decide, no, it was a point. Jack O'Connor was not happy.
Well, whatever about that. And that's kind of stealing away from Donegal.
Well, yeah.
For the last 3 minutes, they basically have possession, and you're thinking, oh, this is going to be like was it the game against Armagh where Derry had the ball a couple of years ago and couldn't even get a shot off. But they were just being very, 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 very patient, waiting for McBrearty to get in the right spot to just sling it over his left foot.
Yeah. I mean,
it's a brilliant end to the game.
It is one of those moments where you have to wind down the clock, because if you score the winner
early,
it's
like American football.
Yeah, exactly.
They were really smart with it, and still Kerry had a couple of chances down the far end. So, my sympathy for Kerry in this situation is very limited, and obviously Kerry have a gazillion players still to come back.
True.
We should mention that Derry picked their Glen players.
Yeah, mad.
We should mention that.
Ethan Doherty and Conor Glass, both playing.
What are you doing, Rory? Come on, just give the lads a week off.
Yeah.
They didn't even talk about a week off, says Rory afterwards. So it's a unique approach that they have. And look, I guess Division 2 in the league is actually far more important than the Ulster Championship this year, because if they finish in the top half of that, they're guaranteed to be playing in Sam Maguire, and they've already got their Ulster glory. So we'll see what happens.
It speaks volumes what's happening in Derry, though, because they want to play. There's obviously a mentality within that squad at the moment that we don't want to miss out here. We want to be playing straight away from the outside of the league.
Yeah.
It's an interesting one. We should give the Roscommon fans what they want.
Well, Kerry played Paul Murphy as well. He was just a week earlier with Rathmore, so it's not like they were the only ones at it.
No Cliffords though, and no Cliffords next week either. I think Jack O'Connor saying for the Monaghan game next week, everyone who was missing yesterday will be missing once more.
Are they not all banned anyway?
Yeah, this is the thing.
A handy red card at the end of the season, you're like, I'll have a couple of weeks off.
Yeah, exactly. And the number of injuries in that squad as well.
The league being back though, the Mayo game, the Mayo Galway game,
brilliant.
Goal of the season is already wrapped up.
I mean, James Carr does he know how to score a normal goal? I don't think he does.
Oh shit. Ooh. Patrick Reed almost had an albatross, it looks like.
That's not what you want to see.
Is that a long club? It is a long club. Yeah.
It's the strut for me, you know. And Poulter sitting there in second as well, ready to pounce. But yeah, still a 2-shot lead.
Not for long, because he's definitely on a par 5, and I think he nearly had.
Straight and true.
Yeah. Anyway, look. Woo, that was one of those ones where you're watching the Masters on the Saturday and the Sunday, and somebody hits that like on the 10th. You're like, okay, well, sure, we can all go to bed now, because if you're doing that, it's game over.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to have like a tap in eagle putt to go level with McIlroy. Anyway, go on.
The Mayo Galway game, brilliant draw, probably the fair result. Porter Joyce, speaking to Ashton afterwards, wasn't happy with the added time. Certainly felt like they went a minute above what they should have. I mean, judging by the clock on screen, it didn't appear that they went too far over. I don't know. It was a brilliant score by Ryan O'Donoghue to level the game.
Yeah, it was. Yeah,
earn a point for that, and a little bit of sportsmanship as well. I think it was Sean Kelly marking him, who was smirking at him as he walked back over to him and kind of gave him a pat to say, great score.
Yeah, I wonder, was there a previous conversation between the two? Maybe not. And he'd missed one.
Yeah,
a few minutes before that too. So it's back. We've got Moyles on a little bit later on this. Colm has joined us.
Morning, lads.
Colm.
Bad weekend for Cork.
Bad weekend for Cork, yeah.
Well, it's a mixed weekend,
because they were Sherlock, though. 14 points with the 19. He'd be delighted.
Highest scoring defeated team.
Rankings. Yeah.
All of our 3 teams lost.
Ahead for 52 minutes.
Cork, Monaghan, and Kildare.
Spotted it went bad.
Yeah, true.
Only the first game.
We had a bad weekend, lads.
Yeah. What a weekend of sport. I think I watched 8 different games on Saturday on the TV. Through different sports. Like,
now that you're married, you now do that.
Well, I had the house to myself. So it was 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. of watching. It was 14 hours.
What were you watching from the women's final?
The women's final in the Australian Open, which, by the way, was a cracker. Arina Sabalenka won her first Grand Slam title in her first Grand Slam final, beat Alina Rybakina, who's the reigning Wimbledon champion. This is some match, lads. 2.5 hours over 3 sets. Rybakina won the first set and then had 2 break points in the first game of the second set, so could have wrapped this up pretty comfortably. Sabalenka had a 3-0 winning record heading into that match against Rybakina, but then she went from there. She hit 51 winners, Sabalenka, in this final. That's outrageous. Like, anything from 20 to 25 is really impressive, so 51 is amazing.
Right.
And Rybakina hit 31. And they were just going for it. Like, they're very similar players. We'll get a bit more on this later with Jenny Claffey, who will break it down a little bit more, but they're basically power players who just go for everything with flat ground strokes. So Sabalenka hit 28 unforced errors, Rybakina hit 25. So they were just hit or miss the whole time. They were just going for it. And it ended up being that, like, it was this power fest where the longest rally was 13 strokes, which is really short. So the average rally was 3.28 strokes, which is really low for that level of the game, but the quality of hitting was amazing. Just winner after winner after winner after winner. And Sabalenka, it's an incredible redemption story. Last year she hit something like 450 double faults, completely got the yips on her serve to the extent that she started serving underarm. Her coach, her long-time coach, offered to resign. She said, no, we'll sort this, don't worry. And she basically spent 2022 taking responsibility for herself, in her own words. So she dropped her sports psychologist. She said she was outsourcing all of her problems too much and she needed to resolve them herself. And she kept the coach. And now we've gone to the point where she went from 450 double faults last year, completely disastrous server, to being a kind of a serving sensation. She hit 17 aces in this final.
Right.
Rybakina hit 9. So it's a brilliant story. And then, of course, the other side of it too is she was playing under a neutral flag. She's from Belarus. So Sabalenka wasn't allowed to play at Wimbledon last year. And as it stands, she won't be allowed to play at Wimbledon this year because they still have that rule in place where no Russians or Belarusian players are allowed to play. Whereas in the other 3 Grand Slams, they can play, but under a neutral flag, like at this one. And afterwards, Sabalenka was quite open about the fact that she's proudly from Belarus. So it's a victory for her and for them. She's quite close to the country's president as well. But thankfully for Sabalenka, she's fulfilling her promise. Herself and Maria Sakkari are 2 of the most talented players in tour, but just couldn't get it over the line. As I say, this is Sabalenka's first Grand Slam final. She had been to 3 semi-finals before and basically blew it. One was against Barbora Krejcikova in the French Open 2021, where she had a match point in the semi-final, and Krejcikova won that. And another was against Emma Raducanu. Leila Fernandez in the US Open the year that Emma Raducanu won it. So finally, Sabalenka made it.
Okay. And then the other one, obviously, Novak wins.
Novak, you'll be delighted. 10 finals, 10 wins at the Australian Open. And overall, he's now level with Rafael Nadal, 22 Grand Slam titles apiece.
I think we need some way of, deciding the GOAT. If you're going to, because people keep coming at us in the comments going, oh, the GOAT. You need to take out the tournament that they win the most and then see who's left. That'll be it. So you
That's
take
not
out
fair,
take out the 12.
Well,
Paris.
They still won the tournament.
Or you take out these 10 Would Federer have the most even spread?
No, Federer only won Roland Garros once, and Nadal was knocked out by the guy he beat in the final, Robin Soderling, whereas Djokovic has won the French Open twice, and one of those times is beating Nadal en route in 2021, which is one of the greatest matches of this century, and he's won the US Open 3 times.
3-2.
Nadal has won the Australian Open only twice. Last year was the second, and that was without Djokovic playing, so there's an asterisk there. And he's only won Wimbledon twice, Nadal, and the last time was 2010. So I would say Djokovic is the best spread. And like Djokovic, like he's won the Australian Open 10 times, fair enough. But like Nadal is 14 at the French Open, and I think Federer is 8 at Wimbledon. I would say overall Djokovic. Here's an interesting stat though. Djokovic has yet to win a Grand Slam without dropping a set, whereas Nadal and Federer did that several times. So Djokovic dropped the set in the second round this year. But look, the whole emotion about this, probably the biggest takeaway, look, the match itself against Stefanos Tsitsipas wasn't great, didn't live up to expectations. At the second time they've met in a Grand Slam final, Tsitsipas went 2 sets up in the French Open final in 2021. But this time Djokovic won in straight sets. Tsitsipas had a set point second set in a 15-shot rally where he was just waiting for Djokovic to miss until Djokovic hit a winner, and that was really the end of the match as a contest, even though it was 2 tie breaks after that. Afterwards Djokovic collapsed in his box.
Did he?
Tears. Yeah.
Oh, in tears.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Because the injury, I'm injured. I'm so injured. No, you're not.
So
he's just you're not. It's not credible. It's not credible. My point, sorry, is if you take out the one that they won the most, right? Then what are you left with in terms of numbers? That would be interesting. What have we got? We got 7 and 3 is 10 and 2 is 12 for Djokovic. You take his 10 out. For Nadal, if you take his 14 out, he's got 8. And if you add up Federer's, he's also got 12.
Yeah, but Federer's on 20 overall.
Yeah, no,
the two lads are 22.
You take out the one they won the most. Take out their favoured surface.
Yeah.
What are they left? You'd have Djokovic and Federer. You see the gymnastics.
I think I still think it's Djokovic if you're going to say that.
They all have lovely trophies.
Well,
because Federer only won the French Open once,
but it's the same number.
Yeah, but it's an even spread. You're talking about the spread. Like the lowest number that Djokovic has won at any slam is the French Open, and that was twice, and he beat the greatest player on clay ever to win that.
Okay,
you know.
Why don't you just marry Novak Djokovic?
Well, I think he should be defended. I think Djokovic is great to watch, and he's brilliant.
What's in his bottles? That's all. He should tell us a bit more about his incredible fitness regime.
I don't know where you're going with that, but I think look, he wasn't going to play like this tournament. He had a hamstring injury.
He didn't have a hamstring injury.
And well,
he seemed grand. He seemed to get
his
better.
Coach Goran Ivanisevic afterwards said 97% of players would have pulled out with the results from the MRI scan, but Djokovic didn't. And Djokovic's annoyance afterwards yesterday was saying that a lot of people doubted the legitimacy of the injury.
It's a flu game.
A lot of people did.
Yeah.
So we had that. He had coming back after last year being deported, and he basically has
where he falsified medical records.
Is a perception against him
and should have been banned from the tour.
He ain't great, but he did it.
Yeah,
he did it. And now we're level. And look, the French Open's going to be class because you have Nadal, Djokovic, 22 apiece, and then Carlos Alcaraz if he's fit. He was world number 1 heading into this tournament. Now Djokovic is again.
Yeah, show up, Alcaraz. Come on, let's be having you.
Sensational.
Should mention before we wrap on the performance rankings, lads. And look, people are saying in the comments I'm not giving Donegal credit. It's paining me to give Donegal credit. Donegal were brilliant. Well deserved their victory. And Roscommon fans, I know, I hear you. 3 second half goals. You were brilliant. What a win. Davy Burke, what a man. Have you heard the Down backroom news over the weekend as well?
No.
This snuck under the radar a little bit. It was so Down had a great win in Thurles to kick off their league at the weekend. Jim McGuinness apparently is in the Down backroom team.
What?
Yes.
Officially?
Stevie Poacher has said this yesterday, that Jim McGuinness is, as of last week, part of Conor Laverty's Down backroom. They're going well. They had a decent McKenna Cup, good win against Monaghan, and then they come into the league with a very, very, very good win down in Thurles, considering the struggles they had in the league last year. But apparently, I'm just looking at the tweet in front of me here from Stevie Poacher yesterday. Massive win for Down away in Thurles. First real competitive win in over a year. Will be a huge relief to the group. Plus, the addition of Jim McGuinness this week has given the whole county a lift. Exciting times. He's a Gaelic Life columnist, of course. We know Stevie Poacher from this show. Good source. But apparently he's back in.
We buried the lead.
Yeah.
We buried the lead. That'll
just came to me again there yesterday. Just there now. So
we will come back to that with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on. But at 14 minutes past 8, that is this week's episode of the Gillette Labs Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Patrick Reed has just gone level at the top of the leaderboard with Rory McIlroy after a tap-in eagle on the 10th. Rory McIlroy is on the tee looking at the leaderboard going, oh, my 3-stroke lead down to 0. It's going to be a bit of an epic back 9 at the Hero Dubai Desert Classic. We'll keep you up to date on that as the morning unfolds. Now, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of Off the Ball. Braeburn Coffee is coming to an Applegreen store near you, with new Braeburn locations popping up every month. Visit applegreenstores.com/Braeburn to find your nearest Braeburn coffee experience. Up next, Mark Lawrenson on Liverpool.
Damien, I hope you're well. Last night we'd FA Cup action, Arsenal City, and I suppose they're setting the tone in the league so far this season, and an entertaining watch, if maybe a bit of a phony war ahead of the league running.
Yeah, I think so, and I think Mikel Arteta will be behind closed doors absolutely delighted with the result, especially European action kicking off again. The last thing you want to do as a manager is to, intimate to your players that you don't want to win this game, or you'd be happy to get out of it because they're on such a good run at the moment. You want to keep that up. But I think in his quieter moments, he would half be saying to himself, you know what, I would love a valiant defeat here and just get out of the FA Cup, and then we can get focused on Europe and the Premier League again. And I think last night was the perfect night for him. He had to show to his players and probably gave him a bit of a dressing down afterwards for things they maybe did or didn't do correctly. And he wakes up this morning and he's happy because they'll more than likely possibly have a free weekend now, which gives him a chance to have a weekend off, maybe get the team away for some sunshine in February when the next round is on, and then the European stuff kicks off again. So although he would never admit anything like that publicly, and he would always come out and say, we wanted to win the game, look at the team I picked, it was a strong team, I wanted to win it, but I think this morning he'll be relieved, I suppose would be the word, but quietly pleased.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Off the Ball Daily.
A home for your favourite podcasts from Off the Ball. The performance rankings, a slight tangent, the crappy quiz, and you had to be there.
You have to be there, but I wish I wasn't there.
Subscribe to the Off the Ball Daily podcast feed right now.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
Right, it's 17 minutes past 8 this morning here on OTB AM. I'm delighted to say that we got Mark Lawrenson with us this morning. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, all good, thank you. I'm going for Rafa.
Oh yeah, me too.
Proper athlete.
Yeah, and a likeable chap, which is important.
Absolutely, yeah.
Jurgen Klopp and the situation he finds himself in at the moment. Andy Robertson, unfortunately, gave a little bit of a hostage to fortune in the post-match where he was like, oh, this is a new low. Is it a new low? It's a cup game. It went end to end. They're up against a team who are really good at the moment.
No, it's not a new low. To be honest with you, I think a draw would have been a fair result. Obviously, Mitoma's goal, he took it up brilliantly. Joe Gomez wants spanking for what he did, turned his back on him, etc. But no, I think there's little signs that they're starting to get a little bit better. Obviously, kept 2 clean sheets beforehand. In the first half yesterday, they could have actually been 2 or 3-0 in front. We know all is not well, but they've certainly improved a little bit. And as everybody knows, just waiting for the injured players to come back. But no, it's most definitely not. That's not a new low, no.
What is the situation at the moment with regards to how well the team is playing? Where are they in that cycle of not playing well at all to the absolute peak that we've seen them? Because, the season is not over. There's still massive games against Real Madrid to come, where if they could easily turn the season around with 2 titanic performances there and suddenly everything is calm again.
Well, the seasons, the 2 games against Madrid are Liverpool's season, aren't they? In a nutshell. And I think he might have a couple of players back by then, which will be obviously beneficial to him. They've had a really, really poor run. They've conceded poor goals as well. And we know all about the problems in midfield, etc. And they won't really be addressed until the end of the season, start of next season. And they're having to make do, and some of the kids are coming into play as well. But I mean, I've seen every game in the last 15 of the games. I've seen every single one, and they were actually quite good yesterday. And as I say, in the first half, they could have run away with it. And Salah, for once, started to look like he might be a little bit interested. He's been very disinterested, in all honesty, but he was definitely ready for it yesterday. It's one of those, and the thing with football is if the top team, if you're not winning, it's all wrong. It's this, you've got to sign him, you've got to do this and change the team and all those kind of things. But they're not a million miles away. But they've just not been good. And I think Klopp's openly admitted that. No matter what he's done, and like anything, when you suddenly think you starting to playing well and winning games, and yesterday was just unfortunate.
I think there was a point yesterday, Laura, on commentary when Ali McCoist pointed out the fact that Liverpool's fullbacks just don't get forward as much as they used to. And you're watching Trent and Robertson. Like, are they more risk averse maybe now than they would have been in seasons gone by?
Well, I think the boy Mitoma, he turned Trent inside out. I mean, he was a game's best player. He was outstanding. So I think that limited Trent most definitely. Robbo's not had a particularly good season. Not as good as he has been. And there's normally been 8 or 9 out of 10. He's just not quite at it. But he's one of many. And obviously, if they knew why, they'd rectify it. But they just can't. They just don't know. I mean, there's lots of theories. And we know that they played every single game possible last season. They hardly had any rest at the end of the season. And I think because of the way they play, that's really affected them. Lacking in legs in midfield. We've got young legs but without experience. And then we've got experience without legs. So, I mean, what do you do? Fabinho yesterday should have been sent off most definitely. Since he's come back from the World Cup, I don't know what's happened to him. He hardly played in the World Cup. I think, did he start one game maybe? So there's a whole litany of players who just haven't been able to perform to the very best. And then when you chuck the injuries, and I'm not sort of saying, obviously I'm a big fan, but I'd like to think that every time I look at the game, if they're poor, they're poor. But they weren't poor yesterday. As I say, first half they could have been 3 up, and that would have obviously made a great difference to them.
It was a shocking tackle from Fabinho and Evan Ferguson, wasn't it? I know VAR probably has. We have to take a look at VAR because surely that should have been upgraded to a red.
Here's one for you. The VAR guy yesterday is my mate, a fella called Neil Swarbrick, who's a Preston boy. And I texted him afterwards, and he actually said to me, I like referees to referee. So take it, but it was just a poor tackle. And in fairness to Fabinho, he knew. He absolutely knew, and he hung around as to say, look, I'm sorry, but I didn't mean it. But it should have been sent off, yes, definitely.
That's an interesting point about the letting the referees referee, right? Because it just, they're not actually supposed to referee anymore. They're supposed to keep the flags down. The linesman is supposed to keep the flag down until the end of the play, and then at the end they put the flag up. So we're in this kind of weird paradoxical situation where no one really knows what's supposed to happen.
No, well, you're absolutely right, and it's chaos every time, isn't it? And I tell you where we've been really, really fortunate with the linesman with the flag down is that nobody's been seriously injured with letting the game go on. Look, if you're offside, you're offside. Put the flag up. I really don't get it at all. And it will happen if it continues, where somebody will get seriously injured, and then there'll be well. You can imagine with a foot that's going to happen after that, can't you?
Yeah, and in this instance, I have a feeling that potentially the referee was like, "Oh, look, if that was really that bad on replay, because I think it might have been bad, but it could easily just have been a fairly stereotypical yellow card. I'll get picked up by the VAR guy, and the VAR guy's like, oh no, the referee obviously didn't want that, and so all of a sudden you have this kind of disconnect, because I don't know how much conversation there is in the build-up to the match. Are you going to referee everything? Yeah, let me go. Let me do my job. Yeah,
what you mean with the VAR guy?
Yeah,
I think that's a really interesting point. Actually, I would imagine that there's probably none, because they all sort of know the rules, and it's just on you go and referee. And I mean, it drives everybody mad, doesn't it? And they need to sit down at the end of the season. We've got a new guru as well now in terms of VAR and everything, haven't we?
I do love a good guru.
Yeah, exactly. So I can't remember his name. He did the World Cup final when I was at it as well. Was at Holland and Spain.
Howard Webb.
The referee. What's his name?
Howard Webb.
2010, yeah.
Howard Webb, who's actually a decent bloke, by the way. So I think, and he's just got in the job, so we give him a little bit of time. But next season will be interesting. The start of next season, most definitely, because you'd like to think that many things will change. And when we wait and see.
Well, look, let's talk about the good of Evan Ferguson then. 18 years of age. We've obviously known about him for a long time as the great white hope of Irish football. But it seems like the rest of the English football media in particular are starting to wake up to him. Fingers crossed the injury is nothing too significant. Yeah. But his performances have been spectacular for an 18-year-old. Yeah, no, outstanding. His understanding of where he's playing and how he's supposed to play in that position is excellent. I think he'll be okay. I just think it's a heavy whack on the back of the leg. I don't think it's muscular or anything like that. And he seems to me like a roughie and a toughie, so he should be okay. And the thing with him, obviously, is he's got to keep learning. But to stick him in and play him on a regular basis with all that they've got at Brighton is a fair old statement, isn't he? And he's learning and he seems to get better each day, each game. And he's scoring goals. So yeah, wrap him in cotton wool.
As a former defender yourself, Laura, like how difficult is it to come up against a striker of Evan Ferguson's type? Because he holds the ball up so well, he can shoot, he can score goals as well, but he gets involved in the play a lot. We saw Kanate, chopping a piece out of him as well earlier in the game. Yeah. So he's tough to mark.
Oh yeah, he's tough to mark, and he's strong, and he lets you know that he's there, and he's got pace. So yeah, he is. He's just one of those, but he can't play without the ball, can he?
Well, true. His movement is quite good though. Like he seems more mature than an 18-year-old.
Yeah, honestly, for his age, he understands the position, and you see young players coming in and running all over the place, and you see him chasing down fullbacks, and all the supporters applaud him and brilliant and all that. He's cleverer than that already. So, and I think he's got a really good manager, and just the fact that he's playing, he probably wakes up every day at the moment and thinks like, wow, I'm in heaven here. This is great, but also how easy it is. So he will get better, but then he'll go through a little spell where things don't work, and that's really when we decide as players looking at him how good he's going to be. Everybody has it. They come in and have that season, and they score goals, knock people around, and look brilliant. And then everybody who plays against him in the next season, they have a plan to play against him. And if you can overcome that plan, if he can overcome that plan next season, he is going to be a real player. Just to tell everybody, Rory McIlroy and Patrick Reed both made birdies in the space of about 5 minutes there, and both are on 17 under par. It's a pity they're not playing together. That would have been box office, wouldn't it? Well, the way it's working out is that Reed is just that one hole ahead of him. So McIlroy is watching everything that's happening. And every time McIlroy plays a good shot, Patrick Reed is like storming off the next green, having just sunk either an eagle or a birdie. Yeah. So it's working out all right. Good. You see a good bit of Preston at the moment, and you've Alan Brown and Robbie Brady are playing. Obviously, they weren't able to do anything in the cup game, and Troy Parrott was unavailable because he's on loan from Spurs. But how are Brown and Brady in particular playing at the moment? Because they're kind of key players for Ireland. Brownie's been iffy. We got left out the other week. He's had a so-so season. Robbie Brady's done well. He doesn't play every game, but no, Robbie Brady's done well. I mean, the thing about them, they're a really defensive team, Preston, because they don't score many goals, and if you look at the record, they hardly ever win at home or score, but they win most of the games away from home. That tells you everything about them. But Brownie's just he's had an in and out season, so hopefully he can kick on now till the end of the season. But Robbie's done well. He's been a good signing, actually. Troy Parrott obviously injured the hamstring in the process of scoring. Troy, he's got no pace, I'm afraid. And he's a nice footballer, but he hasn't scored many goals, as we know as well. But he's got no pace, and I'm sorry at that level, and it's not his fault. But at that level, I don't know where he'll end up. He's obviously only on loan at Preston. He'll go back to Tottenham, but he certainly will not get anywhere near Tottenham's team, I'm afraid.
What's the options then in terms of the Republic of Ireland strike force, Mark, because Michael Obafemi secured a move to Burnley at the weekend, which was great to see. Aaron Connolly with a couple of goals for Hull. You've had Amida in the conversation as well. So there's options there. You mentioned Paris.
Well, it started to look better. We've had games where we look and think, like, who the hell's going to play up front? So I think it's like anything. And once you get competition for places, it pushes players on. And Ferguson should, he's there, isn't he? You stick him in. Why wouldn't you? Because what we've got at the moment, we struggle to score. I mean, Republic of Ireland are a bit like Preston as far as I'm concerned, the top end of the pitch is the most important of any football team. And if you're not scoring goals regularly, thing about it is the opposition know, and they're sort of saying, look, don't make any mistakes. And these guys struggle to make opportunities. So, hopefully they all kick on, which would be great. If you suddenly got 4 or 5 in contention, that definitely will push players on.
One last thing, Matt Doherty obviously played 70 minutes and seems to be slightly ahead of Emerson Royal at the moment because there's been a falling out with Royal. How did he play? How did Doherty play against Preston?
I'm not being funny. I could have played at right wing back at 65. Matt, he did well, but it was, I don't know if you saw the game, but basically Preston set up first half not to concede. Really seriously did. And Tottenham had so much possession, but they were, I think the keeper had to make a couple of saves, Woodman for Preston, but generally Tottenham just played in front of Preston. It was like, have the ball, pass the ball. There were so many balls sideways and all that kind of stuff. And you kind of thought, it was just so easy. It was just so easy for Matt Doherty, but he never kind of got in any position where crosses in or whatever like that, purely and simply because Preston sat there and made it difficult. But I don't know. Sometimes when you watch games like that, I mean, if you looked at Son was the only player on the pitch basically who got his head up and tried to beat people and tried to score, of which he obviously was successful early in the second half. But you look at the games and you're thinking, and you look at, you probably all those stats and you go, well, he completed 193 passes. But you know what? 192 of them were either sideways or backwards. I mean, do you get that when you watch it? Do you feel like that? Because I do.
Yeah, sometimes it definitely feels like it's for no particular purpose at all.
Yeah, I know it is, isn't it? And then, I mean, that's why, the top teams are the top teams, because all the midfield players get the ball and the first thing they do is look forward. All right, sometimes you can't pass it, but, you look forward all the time, try and play somebody in, and you just see game after game after game and you think, oh my God, what is it?
Mark, we'll leave it there. Good stuff. Thanks a million.
Pleasure.
It's Mark Lawrenson giving us some thoughts on various situations over the course of the weekend. You can leave a comment on the YouTube stream. You need to subscribe to our YouTube channel, by the way, to leave a comment. That's something new. And you can also get us 0879 180 180. That's the WhatsApp number.
Just looking at the comments from Shifty Lad. Rory's shoulders are down. I hope he starts bounding down the fairway soon. It's definitely affecting him that it's Reid. Do you think it is? The fact that it's him chasing him? Yeah. That gets in your head.
Reid is playing unbelievably well. He's had a chip in from a bunker. He's had an eagle, which was nearly an albatross. As soon as McIlroy went back in front, Reid had a tap-in birdie at the par 3 after his eagle. So he's on a bit of a roll at the moment. They're tied at 17 under apiece. McIlroy's a hole behind Reid. McIlroy's through 10, Reid's through 11. So we'll keep you up to date on how the Hero Open is going in Dubai. It is 8:33. Up next, Alan Quinlan. First, here's Gavin Cummiskey talking about Bundy Aki on the pay-per-view.
Again, I don't know, because we're in a world of conjecture here with Bundy Aki, because there has to be something wrong if your best player ever to play for your province, still in the prime of his career, is not getting picked.
It might be the case that he could be on the road to a move.
Okay, but you get it out there, because again, we're guessing now. I heard Rory O'Connor talking about some kind of an attitude,
which we don't know.
We don't know. It's source based. I noticed the local reporters didn't ask when they had Andy Friend, or they had the Connacht lads up for media last week. It should be a bigger story than it is. That the almost, I'd say he's pretty nailed on starting 12 for Ireland. Can't get it.
He doesn't have an injury.
And can't get on the bench for his club.
From an Irish point of view, in a World Cup year, as we say as well, how much rugby is he going to play?
he'll play 5 games in the Six Nations. He'll play a bunch of warm-up matches and they're ready to go. But I'm sure they'll have to fix it up, you know. Then again, Andy Friend's picking a good young lad at 12 that they brought from the academy.
I don't know if he's going to pick Aki. Like, he could pick Osborne or McCluskey, maybe on the basis of the fact they've been playing games.
Yeah. We'll keep talking about this. This will go longer than Crokes Glen. I bet
Nothing will go longer than Crokes Glen. Nothing will go longer.
They have to nip it in the bud though, because you bring him into the Six Nations, and if he's outstanding, which I think he will be, I think he'll just come in. Now maybe not. Maybe Jamie Osborne will pass him out when he gets into camp. We'll see. But strange one, isn't it? That it's just still lingering in the wind there. That we haven't got an idea of what
the story is.
That's Gavin Cumsky speaking on the paper yesterday about the Bundy Aki situation and who might start for Ireland over the course of the Six Nations. Alan Quinlan is with us. Might as well just start there briefly to pick up on it. The Irish management are very loyal to you if you've done stuff for them, and in some instances, and then in other instances they're like, well, just picking on form. So what do you think they're going to do with Bundy? They obviously need Bundy. They want him around. So will they reintegrate him into the Ireland squad and then hope that he makes some peace with Connacht?
You would imagine so. I think he hasn't played a lot of rugby, has he, in the last couple of months?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing? I can't decide. Are we delighted that he's fresh coming into the Six Nations and ready to explode into it, or you're like, well, I'm not quite sure about his form?
He's the kind of fellow you need playing matches. You know that if you put Bundy Aki out in a big game, even if he hasn't played in a while, that he's well capable of delivering. He's a phenomenal player. He's a big game player. He has the temperament to kind of be fired up and ready to do a job. But I suppose that little bit of sharpness and match fitness and stuff helps a lot. Robbie Henshaw hasn't played in ages. Would Andy Farrell put him straight back into a team? Robbie Henshaw, possibly. He's done that before. Leo Cullen's done it as well. So I'm not sure if I would think that the natural inclination here is Bundy Aki, Gary Ringrose in the centre next week, but there's kind of little rumours and whispers that it could be Stuart McCluskey.
Right. I was hoping you were going to say Osborne there, because we're all excited about the new shiny new thing. He's probably a bit away, Osborne, in fairness.
He's not that far away, I don't think. Right. I think he could be an option off the bench. I don't know, for the first game. But again, it's only speculation. Bundy Aki could start on Saturday, and I would have no issue with it. Irish fans would have no issue with it. But the only concern is he hasn't played a lot of game. Gavin Cumsky's talking there, and it's, again, you're hearing little whispers and rumours that there's some bit of a clash there. Andy Friend obviously hasn't clarified. They haven't picked him in a couple of weeks. Is it a disciplinary thing? Is it an attitude thing? We don't know. Again, it's speculation. You've got to be fair to the player here. But there's something has gone on there, and there's kind of rumours coming out of the camp that all is not right, and that's pretty obvious that they haven't picked him.
Yeah.
They're saying it's a form. If you've Bundy Aki in your squad and you're playing,
you get him into form. Yeah, especially that
pick him. You play
Newcastle
him.
Away game. You could easily put him in for that one.
Yeah. So it's not an ideal situation, and again, it's only speculation, rumours. Andy Friend says he won't be leaving, going anywhere else. He'll be playing with Connacht next year.
But Andy Friend is leaving, so he won't actually have that decision. In many ways.
But if Bundy Aki wants to go to another province in Ireland, David Nucifora becomes involved there. You can't just say I'm moving to another province. But
you can't force a move if you want to, though.
Yeah, possibly. But we haven't heard. Again, there's something not right there. From a Connacht point of view, Connacht fans would love if it's resolved and it's put to bed, because he's a hero there, and he's been brilliant for them over the years. Of course, he's going to play a big part in the Six Nations, I think. But we'll wait and see what Andy Farrell does on Saturday.
So, in your head at the moment, McCluskey is probably in the most likely starter alongside Ringrose?
I don't know, but I've been asking, and you're hearing things through other journalists and stuff. The question is, how do we know that? Who said that? Because they've been in Portugal and in camp, and they haven't come out and said anything. And
we're due a squad update today, which will give us some news on
and look,
potential injuries. Ronan Kelleher.
Ronan Kelleher it's a shame if he's picked up an injury that'll ruin him out. We don't have full clarity on that either. Tom Stewart has been called up, deservedly so, because I think he's been brilliant for Ulster this year as a real prospect. He's still very young, but great prospect as well. So that'd be a shame, because with the Dan Sheehan, Rowan Kelleher scenario, one of them starting, one coming off the bench. They're phenomenal players, and so that's not ideal for them. But there's going to be a few injuries throughout the Six Nations for each squad. Even though Ireland want to win the Six Nations, and it'd be brilliant if they did. 2019 has shown us that, and with Wales coming up on Saturday, with Warren Gatland, the controversy going on in Welsh rugby at the moment, with the documentary that came out last week, the CEO having to resign over the weekend.
It's a shit.
Not having to resign, he resigned.
Yeah.
I think ultimately he probably, the pressure that was coming on there, but there's a lot of stuff going on there that kind of, you think he'll get, number one, they'll get a bounce off Warren Gatland, absolutely. All the Welsh fans, you see him online talking about it. There's excitement there that Gatland is going to come back and do something. The Ospreys have been going very well. They've qualified for round 16. So there's a little bit of energy there, and nothing better than beat Ireland on Saturday. And the squad, the team he'll pick.
Clive Woodward is predicting a Welsh win to set the cat amongst the pigeons.
Could easily be a Welsh win. If you look at the form in November with Georgia beating them and what happened to them last year, Six Nations, you think they've been gone through a dreadful run. But he'll get a squad and a team on Saturday that will be really difficult for Ireland. So, and then it's a very hard place to play. The crowd get behind them there in the Principality Stadium. Ireland haven't won a Six Nations game there since 2013. So. It's difficult. It's a difficult start, and this is really what I'm looking forward to about this Ireland team: how they can cope with the inevitable physicality, psychological challenges, the stress and pressure that the opposition are going to put on them. It's a really tough start. You think get the first one under the belt. If they get any sort of a win, and I kind of said the same thing 2 years ago, and it was that match where Peter O'Mahony got sent off. Went close in the end. The Billy Burns kick into the corner from the penalty where it went dead. There was a couple of opportunities there, but Wales didn't care, and they went on and won that game. 2019, they're winning a Grand Slam. They're
flukiest one ever.
Well,
every game had a weird thing, which were anyway. Like, look, they won it, we didn't, and that's what the record book shows. There's no asterisk.
Yeah, and Wales go to Scotland the week after, so. This is big pressure for them, and they will get an extra 10, 15, 20% out of themselves because of all the pressure they're under.
I thought it was interesting that Leinster went with the 6-2 split on the bench for the Racing game, which I hadn't seen from Leinster that often in the past. Is there any possibility that we start seeing this type of thing from an Ireland perspective, where we prepare for the inevitable slugfest that's going to happen against South Africa? We might look at that.
It depends.
Can you get Ryan Baird on the bench as a...
Yeah, he's the obvious one. I think if you have Jack Crowley, who can play centre, maybe play full back. So it depends on your sub back, if you like. If they can play in a number of positions, it gives you the opportunity. Conor Murray can play in a couple of positions, maybe. If it happened that you needed two backs on the field and you had early injuries there. It's always risky. Ryan Baird, you could put him on the wing. Absolutely, it pays. Josh van der Fleers has done it before. It depends. Against England and France, it's something that would it be the worst idea.
I'd like to see them experiment with it in this environment, rather than for the first time ever deciding, okay, we need to do this against South Africa in a World Cup or whoever, Yeah. Just as, it was interesting that Leo Cullen did it. Now, maybe it was because of availability of certain players and unavailability of others. If Henshaw had been around, suddenly they just take Osborne on the bench and away you go and everybody's happy. I don't know. But, what are we looking for from an Ireland perspective in this Six Nations? We're favourites with the bookmakers. I don't know if that's just because there's been a weight of money for Ireland. But what do you want to see from the Ireland selectors to show that there's an evolution from last year when they played the best rugby that we've played in a long time?
It's going to be difficult to hit those highs again. Hopefully we saw a little bit of a dip in November and that they can reignite it a little bit again. When you think of, I think a lot of the stuff with any team that's successful and you're winning and you're coming off the back of a very successful period, even though they didn't win the Six Nations last year, France are going to have to deal with this as well. And we've always questioned France's mentality and drive, desire. And when you think of what Galtier has done and Ibanez and Sean Edwards,
all of those questions are gone, aren't they?
They are. And you think, because I think before last year they hadn't won a championship since 2010. You think of all the clubs, and someone said it to me recently, the amount of options that Galtier has to pick from every week with the top 14 and the league below as well. The amount of players that are there to be picked, and it was always going to be about organisation, getting the right players, attitude, fitness, all that kind of stuff. They've kind of got that stuff right. So they're you would imagine if they can kick on and deal with winning in a positive way and get better and keep that hunger and desire, that they'll be a force for many years if they get their house in order, basically, which they seem to have done.
Yeah.
For Ireland, I think psychologically this is, the scars of probably 2019 of coming off a brilliant year and then going, England finding chinks in the armour, physically overpowering Ireland. And that's always a concern, the physical side of and it's the same with Leinster. If you stop their flow, if you get in their faces, if you make it really physical, can you overpower them? And it's the case with Ireland. So can Wales, Scotland, Italy do that? Well, they can make it a complete dogfight and a complete mess, and Wales have done that before. With I think back to Navidi and Tipuric in that game a couple of years ago, back in Cardiff, where they won the Grand Slam and they, beat Ireland 25-7. I think it was. They made it just complete nightmare for Ireland. So they'll try and make it absolutely chaotic. For Ireland, it's dealing with that, and I think, game plan wise, we're much better equipped, i.e. There's an ambition to the way they play, the skill set and the comfort in way they pass and deal with pressure. And going right back to New Zealand, the intense line speed, Ireland were still able to pick holes and find spaces, even off rucks and off mauls, little micro plays that they do that very well. So sometimes that can be difficult to defend, but ultimately, Ireland's scrum and line out, set piece stuff is going to be really important in the Six Nations. So I think they're better equipped this time. They'll know what's coming, and I think that will give them a little bit of edge and a bit of fight to counteract that. There's no guarantees,
Do you think that there's any selection issues to be decided, or has the team kind of rounded into essentially picking itself at the moment? Like, do we know the team now if everybody's fit?
Pretty much so, but I think somebody you look at the back row of if you were to pick a back row now, you're probably going Peter O'Mahony, Caelan Doris, Josh van der Fleer. You mentioned him a minute ago. Ryan Baird could be a real bolter here, someone with incredible athleticism.
And back in form as well.
Yeah, back in form, playing really well. Hard to stop, constantly coming up with moments, getting the ball in his hand. Jack Conan, obviously will have a big say in that, and he'll want to be.
Also started the game against Racing with Caelan Doris at 6, which I thought was interesting. I don't know if that's Leinster going to the Ireland selectors. Here, by the way, this guy was the Lions number 8. You need to pick him.
Yeah, he's still a brilliant player.
Yeah.
But by and large, the team is kind of picks itself. You think James Lowe, Hansen are probably the wingers, even though Jimmy O'Brien's form has been absolutely outstanding as well. Jamie Osborne could really have an impact in the 6 Nations. But by and large, it does pick itself. And it's probably where you want to be. If they hit a bit of a brick wall in the Six Nations, you're saying, oh God.
What if they do a Liverpool on it and everybody loses form at the same time?
The vast majority of these players have gone on this kind of journey. But to be fair to Andy Farrell, since the cycle of the last Six Nations, he's capped a lot of players. I think there is more depth. And if you look at an Irish bench, which is really important, I think now for this group, it's maybe 10, 12 players outside of the starting team. Is there competition there? Is there energy? impact coming off the bench, and I think that's going to be really vital for him. But look, ultimately, we don't want to see what happened in 2019 because that was worrying, I think, and they couldn't find a way out of it. And sometimes that can be difficult. So I think in their preparations, not just in the last few weeks, but in the last year or two, it'll be how do we deal with the power and the physicality. Go back to France last year in the Six Nations when France got really physical and they scored a couple of power tries, if you like. Game was getting away from Ireland, and they had the ability in that second half to really attack, hold on to possession, and they caused France an awful lot of problems.
Yeah.
And brought the game right back into a really close contest in the end. And arguably, they could have got more out of the game, but they really, the reaction after New Zealand. So they might have a poor performance here. They might have a day where Wales could be outstanding next Saturday and find a bit of spark. I don't think that's the end of the world for Ireland, but I think if something like that happens, then I think they're good enough to react this time.
Is there any concern whatsoever about the fact that Tadhg Furlong has only played, half an hour off the bench against Ulster? Like I think he's tried every injury. He's had the calf, the hamstring, the ankle, all since the November internationals. Lack of game time, but I guess he's been wrapped in cotton wool as well for the Six Nations, Quinny.
Yeah, he's... I'm contradicting myself here a little bit with the Bundy Aki, although I'm not saying Bundy Aki has to play. There's certain players can, if their conditioning is right off the field... I have no issue with him. Tadhg Furlong is such a good rugby player. He's so much experience. You need matches. You need contact. You need to be, get that match sharpness up. But someone like Tadhg Furlong is, because he probably, the way the modern game has gone, Shane, most of them only play 50, 55 minutes anyway now. So if we were to wrap him in cotton wool and Sexton in cotton wool until September, would you think, God, is that a real concern that they're not going to find form? Like your biggest scenario with Furlong is he's scrummaging. He's not, obviously if his conditioning is right, I think he'll know how to manage his body, stuff like that. So it's not a major concern for me that he wouldn't be playing too many games.
We were doing the Christmas decorations in my ma's house, and I found the Irish Times from January the 3rd, 2015, and the headline was "Battle of the Out Halves: Who'll replace Sexton?" That's 8 years ago.
I know, it's such a long time, isn't it? Really, and it is what it is. Really, I think there's, I think Jack Crowley is probably, thankfully, we've another person in the mix who
Frawley's due back sooner rather than later.
Yeah, and Harry Byrne is still a very good player. He's still relatively young, hasn't had a big run of games, big involvements week after week. I think Jack Crowley has got a lot of involvements this year, which has benefited him massively. He didn't get those involvements probably in the previous 2 years under Johan van Graan. He had certain moments, all right, in certain games. I think back to a game he played in Cast about 2 years ago in the European Cup. A little bit jittery, a little bit standoffish, some moments in the game. But even the bad moments help you develop and grow as a player. And he's had a tough start to the season with Munster. They lost 3
Who's on the
games.
bench next week?
I'm leaning more towards starting Ross Byrne, I think.
Start Ross Byrne in the game?
No.
Sexton's gonna start.
If Sexton didn't start, right, Sexton's going to start. Sorry. If Sexton wasn't there, I'd start Ross Byrne. I'd put Jack Crowley on the bench.
Right.
Just to give you that little bit more of safer pair of hands, in the sense that Crowley has that bit more of a spark and that ability to do something off the cuff. He's still developing, getting experience along the way. But you're starting Sexton if he's available.
And who's on the bench?
And I don't know if he is available. Is he available?
Oh, we're all assuming he is.
We're assuming he's available.
He's done the press conferences. There's no bandage on the face anymore. He was training in a mask. At one stage, we were told. And I didn't see any photographs of that, so it's hard to know. They keep everything. They keep their cards very close to their chest, but it did look like he was going to be available.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, no. If that is the case, we haven't heard anything different.
Okay.
And I think if Johnny Sexton starts, I don't know. You're kind of blindsiding me a little bit with that one because I haven't thought about it much. I probably. You think if Sexton plays, and there's two options here to think about this, and you've got to think a little bit. And is it unfair on Ross Byrne? If you want to if you're leading the game and you want to see out the game, is it Ross Byrne? If you're chasing the game, it's Jack Crowley a little bit. So it depends what way
they expect to be leading the game.
Right. Okay.
They expect to win this game. You know, obviously you scenario plan for everything.
And Munster have made changes and you know, been pretty good at, you know, backing the players that are there. It depends what way, you know, Mike Catt in particular sees what Jack Crowley can do. He probably is that bit more ability to run with the ball and have that bit of a spark. Is there a mistake or two in Jack Crowley when you handle the ball so many times in the game? Probably. He's still learning. So I don't know. I don't know who sits on the bench. Ross Byrne has obviously put himself in the equation with playing really well. Playing really well for Leinster.
And maybe most recent, like, it was a surprise.
But the answer to your question is I don't know. Either or, I think, and whichever selection happens, so they'll tell us why. And it's something in training, it's the way they're looking or viewing at the game. But I don't have a big opinion on either one of them should start there.
Okay. There's nothing else really up for grabs if everybody is fit as we think they are at this stage.
Not particularly. I don't think. I think it is a case of the bench. If Bundy Aki's not involved at the weekend, well, he's probably not in the 23, is he?
No, he has. They have put him on the bench in the past.
Yeah, they
sometimes.
have, and they did in New Zealand. So
you're not going to 6-2 split if you're putting Bundy on the bench. But
no, you're not. You're picking your out half, scrum half, and
like if you're chasing the game and you want someone to come on and be able to have some kind of physical
and that
impact.
could dictate which way who they pick as on the bench for out half. So maybe Jack Crowley going on the bench gives him the option of a back three player. He can play in the back three as well.
Do the Netflix cameras have any impact? I saw Tyke Furlong being asked about it. I know they've been in the Algarve, Ireland, for warm weather training since Thursday. Like he was kind of saying, I don't know how much intellectual property we'll give away in terms of team talks and that sort of thing, but it's definitely something the players will notice, cameras being there that mightn't have been there before in situations like team talks.
Well, if we unravel again, it'll be something we'll be talking about. That it was a distraction and you'll go to town on Ger.
Oh no!
Depends on the result.
Like the bus that time that Joe Schmidt blamed in Scotland.
We've had this chat a few times. Ulster travelling to Sale. I'm telling you, as a player, it does make a difference. It shouldn't. To the outside, it does.
You're saying the cameras would make a difference if you were in the dressing room?
But the bus being late to Murrayfield would drive me demented as a player. It would actually unsettle me. Some guys, they'd walk up.
Shouldn't the head coach be able to in a position to go, don't worry, Quinlan, we've got this?
You can't go around to every player and go,
that's what he said he is.
Calm, lads. You've 20 minutes to get changed or half an hour to get changed and be out in the field and play an international. No.
If you're standing at the top of the bus going, what that's going on?
Yeah, well.
Do you know what I mean? There's like a...
It happens sometimes.
It affects different players differently.
Anyway, but the Netflix cameras, I don't think will make any difference. I think again,
they're with everybody though, right?
Yeah, it's true.
It's the way of the world. They're doing their own TV anyway, Shane, all the time, and their own stuff as a team. But it's a big week from now, I think, and it's a big mental kind of challenge for them. And if they started off well, they have a great chance because with England and France coming to Dublin, it sets it up for possible success.
This is our year, yeah. So you're Grand Slam or bust.
Grand Slam, World Cup, you name it.
Let's go, baby.
Nice one.
Quinny, good stuff. We'll know the team by the time Alan's with us on Friday, and we'll get the rest of the predictions about where everybody's going to finish. Tied at 17 under apiece, Reid and McIlroy. Neither of them burning it up just at the moment. Reid through 12. McIlroy also through 12, so they're both on the 13th obviously at this stage, and McIlroy needed to save par, but the 13th is a par 5, so it could well be significant. 8:58, Jenny Claffey is standing by to talk to us on the Australian Open finals. First, here's some Ryan O'Donoghue goodness after he kicked the equaliser in the dying seconds for Mayo against Galway, speaking with Aisling O'Reilly after the draw.
Ryan O'Donoghue, a draw against Galway. Will you take that result here in McHale Park?
Yeah, I think we will. Look, after the game, would have been a sickening one to lose, I suppose. So at the end, thankfully, I got a second chance at the shot that I got previously. So I was just really delighted to go between the posts and get a point on the board.
Yeah, that shot was from distance, and as you said, you had one previously. So to have that confidence to go again, in the dying minutes to level the game.
Yeah, look, to be honest with you, in the first one, I put it wide, and then Matty just came up to me straight afterwards and just had a word in my ear and said, look, we'll trust you. If they get that opportunity again, go for it. So it really shows the togetherness, and I knew in the back of my head then that the boys had trusted me, and to be honest with you, I'd kicked that probably 9 times out of 10 anyway, so I was pretty disappointed myself on the first one, and thankfully backed myself, and I was just delighted I went through the post, to be honest with you.
And it's a massive rivalry with Galway. You could feel it out there today, even just up in the stand. So I don't know, it must have been like that for you on the pitch coming into this game. Is there anticipation, nerves about it?
Yeah, of course. Look, anytime you play someone in your provincial, in your province, it's going to be tough, and especially with Galway, we've had great battles with them over since I came in 2020. We've played them every Connacht Championship. So yeah, look. Anytime you play Galway, you want to beat them. But it was nice to get out there in front of the crowd again. First big game in McHale Park for me since I played Galway last year in the championship. So I was delighted to get that out of the way. And yeah, the crowd were brilliant again tonight. So it's good start to the year.
And there's a freshness with a new management in. What has Kevin McStay brought?
Yeah, look, everyone is wanting to prove themselves. And it's great, Kevin and Stephen and everyone in the backroom team. It brought something new and great tactically, and everyone's enjoying training, and we're just chomping at the bit at the moment now. So we into training Tuesday night, and then we go up to Armagh Sunday, so really looking forward to it.
Thanks so much.
No bother, thank you.
Yeah, Mayor Armagh should be a good game. It's Ryan O'Donoghue speaking with Aisling O'Reilly after the draw at the weekend, and we'll talk about that with Anthony Moyles in just a little while. But first, Jenny Claffey is with us to talk tennis. Colin also here. Jenny, good morning to you. How are you?
Good morning, guys. How's it going?
Pretty much as we anticipated in the men's, a routine victory in the end for Djokovic, with maybe one tiny glimmer for Tsitsipas, but
yeah, safe to say, yeah, Djokovic is still the dominant force in the men's side. No surprises there, really. He goes through the tournament, only drops one set. Like, he's just the man to beat.
It wasn't close in any of the games really after the dropped set. Like, there was never any sense he'd win the first set 6-1 or 6-2, or win the second set 6-1, and you'd be like, okay, why can nobody get close to him at the moment? Why are they all, it seems, beaten before they even go out?
Yeah, it seems that way. Just, I guess, the records he has, how good he is. Say, even just looking at the Australian Open, how good his results have been there. He's won his 10th Grand Slam there. It's kind of our 10th Australian Open there. It's kind of hard to go up against someone who you know is in such form, who's so good at on his home slam, as we call the Australian Open for Djokovic. It is a question for these guys, like, what do they need to do to beat him? I'm even pulling my own hair out, wondering, like, what do these guys have to do? Like, Tsitsipas had a great tournament. He looked really good throughout the 2 weeks in Australia. Comes into the final and he just looks like a mediocre player against him. Djokovic just seems to have this level above the rest of the guys. They can seem to tap into when he needs to, when the going gets tough.
What about that 15-shot rally in the second set? Tsitsipas had set point against Djokovic. Why he was passive? Was he waiting for Djokovic to make a mistake, or was he just too afraid to level the match with Djokovic?
It looked in that second set, like, it looked like Tsitsipas definitely had a chance. Djokovic looked very rocky, like you could see he was visibly very frustrated and getting annoyed at his team and whatnot, and didn't know what to do. And when Tsitsipas had that set point, he was passive. It looked passive, and you could see even in that moment Djokovic was a little bit nervous, as his behaviour was through that second set. But he was the one who stepped up and ripped this forehand winner to hold, to win that point and then eventually hold. So, I mean, in that moment, Tsitsipas wasn't brave enough when he needed to be.
So I think, Colm, you gave us these stats about the number of forehand errors that Tsitsipas, 30 unforced forehand errors in the final. Is that why you're passive, or is that why you look passive? Is because every time you try not to be passive, you're making a mistake? Or are you making those mistakes because you're too passive?
Yeah, well, I mean, going up against a guy like Djokovic, you have to take it to him, so you've got to be aggressive. But he forces you to make mistakes. So you look at that stat, 30 unforced errors, you think that's pretty bad, it looks bad. But I would say he was trying to be aggressive, but Djokovic puts you under so much pressure that you end up making mistakes, going for too much.
So it's kind of a misnomer to call them unforced in a way.
Yeah.
Like
maybe force would be more fair in that situation. Yeah.
Like, is that a psychological thing? Because we'll talk about this with Sabalenka. Is that a psychological aspect that he has, or is that just the power and consistency that Djokovic has? Because when you're in the middle of a game, right, and you're playing this, and you realise that what you're doing is not working, how easy is it to kind of go, okay, well, I need to go for broke here?
Well, you go out against a player, like, you know, you shape your game about how you want to play initially. So every player has a plan A and a plan B. So you got to be able to try to adapt in the moment. But like against Djokovic, you could throw the kitchen sink at him and it still doesn't seem to hurt him or have any effect on him. So, you know, the different players who come up against him play different styles, but it still is never enough to beat him. Whereas like Tsitsipas came out yesterday, all guns blazing, trying to play an aggressive game, took it to him, but just wasn't anywhere near him at the races yesterday.
But like, Tsitsipas' strongest shot is his forehand, and Tim Hellman kept on saying in commentary yesterday in Eurosport, if this is against any other player, Tsitsipas would make that shot, he'd make this shot. Like, Djokovic sometimes doesn't have to play, it's all in the head of these players, and especially like the Tsitsipas, Zverev, Medvedev team, that generation, those four, like seriously talented players, but they have this inferiority complex against Djokovic and Nadal. Isn't it up to Carlos Alcaraz now to change everything?
Yeah, I think like if we were looking at those four you just mentioned there in a different era, these would be decorated stars of the game. But just because Djokovic and Nadal are still around, they're not quite getting that fame that they deserve. I mean, they're unbelievable tennis players. Like Tsitsipas, his forehand, as I said, throughout the 2 weeks of the Australian Open, he was on fire with that. He comes up against Djokovic, and Djokovic was better than him on all accounts. Forehand, backhand, serve, everything yesterday. And that's not even Djokovic's weapon, his forehand.
Well, you famously said on these very airways that Djokovic would make 30 Grand Slams. You said it, what, about a year and a half ago?
Yeah.
He's on 22. Nick Kyrgios joined you in the prediction. He said 28 yesterday on Twitter afterwards. What's he going to end on?
He's definitely going to end up on over 25 to 30. I mean, if he can stay injury free over the next 2 to 3 years, I think he can keep up this level. I think he's going to win. Yeah, he's definitely going to win the next 5.
That's what Ivanisevic's coach said after the match. He said he could go for another 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
So like you'd expect if he keeps winning at this rate that he will reach that quite comfortably. Like he seems to love adversity. The whole injury stuff at the start of the tournament, you're like, I mean, was he using this as a mechanism to kick himself on?
Yeah.
Obviously, we don't know how injured or otherwise he was, but it seems to have worked for him either way.
Yeah, well, I think adversity fuels Djokovic's fire. It just seems to work for him in a way that he can channel it into winning. And we can see it time and time again. He is not the fan favourite, but he seems to just be able to channel that into putting it onto the match court and getting the results.
What was it about yesterday? He seemed to be having a go at Goran Ivanisevic, his coach.
In the middle of the match.
Yeah, what's that about? Why does he seems to pick fights sometimes.
I think he was just looking for something yesterday in that second set. Like things weren't going his way, and he said afterwards he was looking at Djokovic. You could see he was eyeballing him the whole way from the baseline to the sit down, and he was saying that he was looking for help. He didn't know what to do in that moment.
This is new though, right? This is the first tournament where the coaches have been allowed to coach during the tournament.
Yeah, but Ivanisevic wasn't even responding to him. He wasn't helping him really that much, but he was just trying. You could see he's a very emotional player and was in his day, but he was trying to stay very calm, but it was written all over his face.
What sort of coaching can actually help a tennis player in the middle of a match? Like at that stage, what is it? Just minor things, addressing swing, like the technical details of it. What can they actually say to help them?
Yeah, but it's going to be nothing more than you were told in your pre-match before you go out on the court. Like, you know, you're playing your tactics against how this other player plays, so you're going to obviously know what they're doing, what their weaknesses are, etc. But the coach is watching from the sideline, seeing what the other player is doing. You can't see that when you're on the court as such, maybe, but it would be small things like, you know, serve your serve down the tee, or play more to his backhand, or, you know, just those small things. It's almost like those reassurances you need, and then just like those few positive reinforcements that
it's a funny dynamic though, because the opponent can hear the advice too. So it's like, well, go to his backhand, and the opponent can clearly hear it as well.
Fair, not in Serbian anyway.
Well,
but
yeah.
Patrick Reed is in the lead at 18 under par. He's had a tap-in birdie after a brilliant chip on the par 5. McIlroy is on the fairway watching that happen. Let's talk about Sabalenka, because the psychology of the game is really interesting. In her, Colin's been talking about, she had the yips last year at serving. She served underhanded, and then all of a sudden she's the best server in the tournament and wins on the back of a really powerful serve.
Yeah, there's a lot to that. Last year, she had a dreadful year, serving the worst. Like, I think she had 400 double faults last year over the course of the year, which is like 100 more than the person next to her. And she also hired a biomechanist to have a look at her serve, which is the first we've ever heard of in tennis. Like, normally you get your coach to do that, but she actually hired help from outside. And I think whether that was psychological or technical. It's worked for her, and she seems to have turned it around. And yeah, she served amazingly throughout the 2 weeks, and since the latter end of last season, she's turned her game around, and she's much calmer now and playing with a lot more confidence and assurance in her game.
What was the whole Pam Shriver having a row with the coach? And Pam Shriver was on Twitter going, I hope that she finds a coach who treats her better as a whole human being. Is her coach particularly vocal?
Sabalenka,
yeah.
I think last year she was looking to fire him at some stage. So I don't know. Like at this high level, there's such high stakes. Emotions run high all the time. I'm sure that there's love-hate relationships going on all the time. But no, I think he's been with her for a few years now, and this meant as much to him as it did to her, I think.
How do you change that psychology around the serving? Let's say, so the Yips last year over 400 unforced errors, but she had 17 aces in this final. So she obviously has the talent, but how do you go about changing that mentality from your own experience as well?
Yeah, I guess when you have the yips on, I remember.
Did you ever have the yips?
Well, on my backhand, I certainly had the yips. More so, that's the toss and the serve. But on my backhand, I remember winning my first international tournament, and I couldn't hit a double-handed backhand. I sliced the whole time because I just had convinced myself I couldn't hit a two-hander, and then came back from winning that. So won my first international title. You'd think you'd be high as anything. That whole week after in training, I hit my double-handed backhand into the back fence for a week, and then it settled down mentally, just calmed down, and went back to basics and was able to figure out, okay, look, there's nothing wrong with that. I can do this. Trust yourself. And it seems that Sabalenka has kind of gone through that process. Obviously, she's had the biomechanist in last year helping with her serve, but she even says herself she's now trusting her game. She believes in herself a little bit more, and she's now in those tight moments able to calm herself down and obviously work through those moments of nerves.
I was reading as well that she spent a lot of time in between games in the gym to kind of take her mind off the tournament, if nothing else, obviously to help her physicality as well. But that sort of thing is crucial as well, that people forget how much downtime these players have, and how they spend that downtime in the middle of a tournament is fairly imperative.
Yeah, and especially for Sabalenka, who's been to this stage, of the Grand Slams before. She's been in 3 semi-finals before and had 3 tough semi-final losses, and 2 of those you could put down to her mentality. She wasn't there. She got nervous. Her serve let her down in those tight moments. So yeah, those latter ends of the tournament, when there's not that many players around, there's not that buzz there, you need to do things to keep yourself occupied and keep your mind busy. And she seemed to have done that very well this time.
We kind of expected Swiatek to be the dominant figure in women's tennis, but maybe we're wrong. There's not going to be a dominant figure. There's going to be loads of players who come and have a 12, 14, 18 month period, who win during that period where they're kind of cresting to a peak. And that's what's going to happen over the next couple of years until somebody does emerge who is the new global superstar.
Well, I think we were all talking about Swiatek, and Swiatek does have that talent to be the number one, and we definitely can't count her out yet, just with a few bad tournaments, especially when coming into the clay season now. I think she'll prove her dominance there. If Sabalenka can keep up this level that she has been showing the last month or two, she will be a dominant force, but it's whether she can keep that up. When it comes to the big tournaments like the Grand Slams, can she maintain that level? But at this level, she's scary good. But as we've seen in previous years, she hasn't been able to maintain the level. We've been talking about her, but she would have peaks and troughs, and obviously she was a bit of the mental. She would have a few mental wobbles, but she seems much stronger now. But if she can keep that game, I think she'll be a force to reckon with.
Is Sabalenka the most naturally gifted player on the tour?
I think her and Rybakina are up there with that. They have this raw power. Look at the two of them. They're 6 foot tall, but they don't look necessarily as strong as, let's say, Williams, and they play very much like Williams, but they have this raw power that they seem to be able to generate, which is something not all the players have. That they have to work on that a lot.
Using a biomechanist would suggest it's not natural either, that it's this is fully worked on, that there's it's not pure talent, it's science as well.
Yeah, but she always had raw talent though, didn't she?
She did have, yes, she did. She's we were talking about in 2019 that she was going to be somebody who'd be very good, and then obviously the mental side plays a part in that. But talent, within that, what defines talent, is power talent, because she has that. But as she got the finesse and the touch and all the other, you look at Lawrence Jabeur, she's got talent in abundance in terms of she can do anything. She can play with power, she can play with slice, she can play with spin. She's probably got much more variety in her game, whereas Sabalenka has that kind of raw power talent, definitely. So that's debatable.
You brought this racket in for our video watchers today.
Yeah.
Can you tell us the difference, right? This is a question from Shane, I think. What's the difference between a club racket and a professional racket in terms of weight?
So it depends, I guess, on the racket. On the player. Do you mean club?
Like like a racket I buy in one of the sports shops down the street today, is that the same as a racket a professional would use?
You could buy the same one that the professionals are using. Yeah,
same level, right?
Yeah, so you just go in there and tell them what you're looking for. But generally, the guys is a shop actually in Fitzwilliam Tennis Club. They're the best in the business in Ireland for tennis rackets. They'll know exactly if you tell them how often you're playing, like how you kind of play, what game style you hit power, you hit spin, and then they'll gauge male, female, what weight of a racket they'd give you. Most of the players are using heavier rackets than the club level player, and they'll have different names. So like this is called the Head Radical Light. So that would probably be more so for a club player. And then the pros would have either Radical Pro or Radical MP, which is just a different weight. But yeah, you can go walk off the street and buy one of the rackets that Andy Murray or Djokovic or Sablenka are using.
Could you win a Grand Slam with this racket?
Yeah, I would have, if it wasn't for an injury.
I would have played county.
Yeah. That's a Radical Light. You play with the Light.
This is the Light, yeah. I've been using that after an injury because of the elbow. I wasn't able to use the heavier racket.
Okay.
So this is the one.
Where's the weight distributed?
So again, it depends on the racket. So normally you can test if you like a lot of.
That's
rackets.
Very light though, isn't it, Colin?
It's very
so
light.
Yeah.
So you can see there if you weighed up the head is slightly heavier. Some of the other rackets, if they will sit like. That obviously doesn't, but some of them will sit like that, which means it's evenly distributed. But there, it's head heavier.
This is a stupid question. Like, there's no way you hear in cricket and rugby balls getting tampered with, and even in hurling as well. Like, there's no way to make that racket better for yourself. Like, there's nothing you can put in your hands to get better grip or tighten the strings ever so.
Well, you can. There's always little things you can toy with. Like you can put little weights around. Like they have these lead tape that you can put around to make the racket a little bit heavier if you want it to be head heavier. Because then your follow through, obviously you have to drag a bit more through or accelerate a little bit more through, and that'll give you a bit more punch on it. You can. Yeah, the strings is a big thing. Like there's so many different types of strings available to the players, and depending on the heat, depending on the balls, that will all affect the tension of the strings that they're using.
And that's all legal though. You can do what you want.
All of that's allowed. Yeah.
Just don't put a hole in the middle of your racket. That's the key to it.
Well, just make sure you're hitting the middle of the racket every time, the sweet spot.
Yeah. That's mad. I didn't realise you could go in. There's not many sports you can go in and buy the exact. Murray could have that racket.
Yeah.
I always thought there was this magic racket that all the pros had. But then they smash them up so often. You're like, well, they must have loads of them.
Yeah, they do. They carry between 6 and 12 rackets in their bags. Yeah, all with kind of some of the same and some with different tensions depending on like if they start off in the daytime and then ends up in the nighttime, they'll have different tensions in the strings and that's why you see them changing their rackets. When ever notice when the new balls they change the rackets, so that's changing the tension in the strings then to suit the faster ball.
All right, Jenny, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
It's 9:16, just gone 9:17. Rory McIlroy just had a tap in birdie, having just come up short with an eagle putt. They're both on 18 under par, Reid and McIlroy, through 13. Patrick Reid is on the 14th, and he's playing really great golf at the moment, Patrick Reid. But he has become the hunted because he's come from 3 strokes back to lead by 1, and then Rory McIlroy has just tied it again. So we'll see if the pressure gets to Reid. So far, there's been no sign of it. Anthony Moyles is standing by. We're going to talk to him in just a moment. Here's what's on OTB Sports Radio for you today. At 1 o'clock, OTB Gold is Paul McGrath. Spelonk at 3, State of the Union is rugby at 4, and OTB Gold is Jack McCaffrey. One of his retirement interviews, but he's back now, obviously. Up next, as I said, Anthony Moyles reflecting on the weekend. But here is Jack O'Connor talking to Aisling after Kerry's defeat to Donegal.
Jack O'Connor, how are you feeling after that game? A 1-point loss to Donegal here in Ballybuffet.
Disappointed, it's you always want to get on the board early and get some points on the board, so disappointing going home now, a long goal journey, so we lick our wounds and dust us down and go again next weekend.
Yeah, there was one point in particular that was quite controversial. At the start it was waved wide, then it was given. What was your view on it?
Well, it was wide, everybody, I don't know how many thousand people were here today, but I'd say every one of them thought it was wide except the umpire. But anyway, sure, look, that's what happens when you're in away grounds. You don't tend to get breaks.
Did you say anything to any of the
sure,
sideline?
What's the point? There isn't much point. The linesman beside me said it was wide, but sure, look. Anyway, let's not dwell on it. Look, Donegal put up a good fight there in the second half and came strong, and fair dues to them. McBride to kick the good score to win it.
Yeah, it's not easy to come to Ballybuffet, especially without probably some of your key players.
Look, we I don't even want to dwell on that. We have what players we have at the moment, and they're putting in a great shift and they fought hard here today, but just fell a bit short. So we have an opportunity at home now next weekend to try and get points on the board, and that's what we'll be focusing on now.
Yeah, disappointing, but it is a chance to see new players, to give them a chance at this level as well.
Well, it is, but you don't want to get into the habit of losing games now. It's a bad habit to get into, and certainly not one that we want to get into.
And just on the club championship, obviously it was very successful for Kerry in the All-Ireland series. 3 clubs doing very well, so it's been a while until you'll get those players back fully.
Yeah, look, we'll take it case by case. I mean, Paul Murphy played with us today, but he had got a break, back before Christmas there, so Paul played well, kicked 2 scores for us, and it'll be a few more weeks before we have the rest of them back.
Do you find that important as a manager to give them the time, for the likes of the Rathmore lads, for the Fossa lads?
It is, because it'll come back to bite you later on. If they don't get some kind of a break, they're not robots. So we'll be playing that on a case by case basis.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
OTB GAA.
So far as the GAA are concerned, in this matter, it's nothing to do with the individual teams. This is to do with the GAA protecting its own rules, protecting its own reputation.
Every are once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, and they have a legitimate position to challenge that due to the incompetence of the GAA.
Subscribe to the OTB GAA podcast feed wherever you get your podcasts.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar. Right, the league is back. Massive crowds all around the country for the return of the Allianz Football League. The hurling league gets underway at the next weekend. Anthony Moyles is with us to look back on some fairly interesting storylines. We may as well start. We heard Jack O'Connor a little bit upset about the fact that maybe one of the points that Donegal scored was actually wide, but I don't know. I mean, I think the real story coming out of that game is that Donegal have an entirely new management team and a bunch of kids, and they were bloody good.
Yeah, they were, Ger. Good to be back. Good to be back. The league is back. Good to be back on bright and early. I don't know. It's amazing. It's a new look Donegal. It's a new look Paddy Carr. He was sporting a fairly groovy looking hairdo yesterday. Paddy's getting bit by the wild Atlantic way, it seems. But yeah, he's settled in nicely. And they've unearthed a couple of good lads. The new lad, Caelan McColgan, I thought was fantastic. He kicked a couple of scores, raided up and down the half back line. In the modern era, as we know, if a team sits in, you need half backs and indeed cornerbacks, but certainly half backs who are able to come up and kick scores from range. And he was able to do that. He was able to add pace at vital times. But it was a game probably that Donegal would have said, look, we're going to try and catch Kerry, here, they have to come all the way up to us. They have a lot of players missing. They have a lot of players who are in club duty who'll be taking a bit of a break. And they would have earmarked this to probably, I'm sure, get 2 scores. Now, it didn't look likely at all during it, especially with the gift of the goal they gave them. But I thought they were the better team, to be honest with you. And, for young lads to get that win, you actually heard McColgan with an interview afterwards. It was a kind of a rallying call, bit early maybe, but maybe he's shown his vibrancy and his youth. But he was kind of saying, it was vital that we set down a marker here. And it probably was, for Paddy Carr and the new look management team that they come out and that they give the supporters something to shout about and a bit of let's say hope after the Michael Murphy era.
Bit of bite out of Paddy McBrearty in an interview as well afterwards, Anthony. I think he was asked, or the reporter said to him, a bit of a shock result, and he said, well, to who? Not to us. And look, he came up clutch, as he always does. As he said, that this Donegal team, I was watching them in the McKenna Cup, and I was concerned a bit for Donegal. They didn't look great, but then of course that mix of youth and experience is what they have, and I think that was McBrearty's first point of the day. So he came up when the moment needed him. Yeah,
it's funny, I watched him last year. I thought he was a little bit out of condition last year. He was probably struggling with injury. I know he has been struggling with injury probably for the last year and a half, 2 years, but he's looking as conditioned as I've seen him now in the last 2 or 3 seasons. So he's obviously putting the work in. I thought he was actually well shackled during the game. They found it difficult, Donegal. It's amazing the way they were able to use Murphy, obviously, over the last number of years. They'd pull him out to midfield when required, and then they'd have him as the focal point in at full forward. And there was always that out ball especially when teams didn't crowd in front of them. They didn't really have that yesterday. If you look, a lot of stuff went through the hands, a lot of stuff went through the lines. There wasn't really the quick ball in, and they found it difficult to hit McBurty. McBurty has always been a corner forward, so even when he has to go into full forward, there's different runs required. So if you actually watch, a lot of balls that went into him kind of into the corner, and he had to go out and get them and kind of recycle them around. Now, he doesn't mind doing that, because when he comes around on that loop, he'll recycle it and then he'll look for the return. And of course, that worked like a treat. We've seen him kick those scores for umpteen years, and talk about a time to come up with it, like an unbelievable strike in, you know, pretty soggy conditions at 70-something minutes on the clock. Legs are tired, you've after putting in a shift, and he comes and he sticks that over the bar. So fantastic leadership from him as captain, and a great way to win the game.
Yeah, and it's not really a disaster for Kerry if they have a slight grudge heading back down the road, a grievance to nurse over the rest of the week. They've got Monaghan in town in Kerry next week, and like, for all Jack saying, the players that we have are the ones that matter at the moment, that's not the case. Like, you know, whatever happens in the league for Kerry is completely irrelevant. If a Cumber gets a few more games and bedded into the team and is somebody who might be important for them in the championship, like, Kerry, we know, are a known at this point, and it's up to everybody else to try and shoot them down.
Yeah, and where it's important, Ger, for them is the likes of Paul Murphy yesterday. You know, this is an important league for the likes of him, who has been on the team, has been very important to the team, then found himself kind of on the periphery last year. Spillane as well, a guy who's kind of been in and out. Jack Barry, an important league maybe that he just solidifies midfield, especially with Moran retiring. There's a couple of subplots, I think, with Kerry, and a couple of sub-stories going on with them. But do they have to unearth forwards? No, is the answer. You know, they're not in that camp. Do they have to unearth a couple of backs? They're pretty tidy still. Like, I mean, we know, you know, Morley does his job. They have, you know, great full back line. They still have the power and pace of the half forward line or half back line with White, etc. So, you know, they're not in any kind of even way you'd say, Jesus, they have to get one or two players. It would be nice for them, I would say, to see, can they bring Brosnan along? Can they bring one or two forwards? So if anything ever happened to Clifford, or indeed Paddy Clifford, or indeed Gainey, that they can push. So, for example, Spillane is an important league for him to kind of really start to cement a place and kind of nearly have it in a situation that when Clifford comes back, Clifford's really battling with him to try and, you know, wrestle back a corner forward or a full forward spot. So they need these lads not to kind of sit back. It's a strange one. The mentality can't be, when we get these lads back, we'll be all right. It can't be that way. And you're right. This will now give the lads a good kick up the rear end this week. You can already know what they're saying this week for training. You know, that lads, that's one loss. If we lose another one, all of a sudden we're 0 out of 4, and we're staring down the barrel of a gun coming into down to Division 2. So you can imagine they'll be up in the ante this week. The rhetoric around, you know, to forget the rest of the lads, you set your stamp on this team, you know, you hold on to the jersey, all that stuff will come in. And it is important that they do that, because, you know, when you look at the successful Dublin teams of obviously the domination that they had, they treated that league very, very importantly, you know, and they didn't just kind of say, when we get this lad back and that lad back, we'll be all right for the championship. They went out and they generally got, you know, to the latter stages of those leagues. And the fellas who came through, who may have been on the panel for a year or two, cemented their position going into the championship.
That's the point I think you made, Ger, uncovering new players. Darragh Roach at full forward for Kerry yesterday. I'd have to say I was fairly unfamiliar with him before yesterday. Kicked 3 lovely points. Kicked a winning point, I think, a couple of weeks ago in the McGrath Cup against Clare in the last minute. I made headlines last summer. He scored 3-9 in a club game for Glenflesk against Brosna. Like, this is a guy kind of coming in under the radar, Anthony, but that's the exact type of player that Kerry need to uncover, especially when they have so many injuries.
Yeah, you know, and I think Shane gives them something different as well, in the sense of he's a strong full forward type, you know, well able to take hits, but he can shift as well. Like, he got a ball there yesterday, if you remember, for one of his scores, coming across on his left. He had a bit to do. He had 3 Donegal men around him, and he managed to get away from them with speed, and they were right on him. and he held up to the tackles. Most lads would have probably maybe gone down there, and he could have won a free, but he held strong and he stuck the ball over the bar. I do think he gives them that. Look, again, they'll possibly need a foil slightly for Clifford, because every team, in the rest of the country will think, okay, how do we stop him? How do we put players around him? So if all of a sudden you can say, well, actually, we can stick him out the corner forward, or we can put him out at 11, and we can put him as a 15 and just bring him out around the half forward line. That completely messes your plan up. Now, if they have a full forward such as him, who's able to win ball and win dirty ball, he strikes me as that type of a player, but who can also kick scores. That's going to be a big bonus for them.
We've baried the lead again. Jim McGuinness is back in the backroom team of the Down footballers, apparently, according to a Stevie Poacher tweet.
Yeah. He came in. I think allegedly he did a training session or two last week. Now they're saying that he's not part of it, but he obviously is part of it. I don't necessarily agree with these guys coming in and just doing one training session or two training sessions a month or something like this. I just think it actually can unsettle things more than anything. Maybe not this time of the year, but certainly as it gets closer to the kind of championship end of things. It's a strange one, but I think, it's a young management team up there, and they're obviously just trying to kind of unearth a couple of things and bring in a bit of experience where they can. So, I don't think there's a whole pile wrong with it.
Yeah. And who do Down have in the first game in Ulster Championship? Is it Donegal? I think it is Donegal. I mean, the narratives, the stories write themselves, Anthony.
Yeah, well, I was amazed. I wasn't keeping an eye on the golf, and you talk about just the stars align sometimes, and that's just happens. And does McGuinness go in there and all of a sudden plot? You can see it happening, and certainly add a nice bit of spice to that championship game.
I had heard that McGuinness could have been part of the backroom team if Rory Kavanagh had ended up getting the gig, and obviously Rory was very close to getting it, and then that didn't happen, and all of a sudden Cara ends up getting it after a protracted process. So look, it's as you say, sometimes the stars align. So we've talked Donegal, Kerry, Mayo and Galway. Again, look, it's very early in the season, but Mayo showed character to come back. They also showed that they have some forwards who are willing to take risks, and sometimes no risk it, no biscuit, and sometimes you score the goal of the season in the opening round of league fixtures. So I think both teams will be relatively happy with a tough, hard-fought game, and you end up with a draw.
Absolutely. 14,500 or 13,500 or whatever it was in McHale Park. Great atmosphere. Saturday night game. Who cares about the conditions when you have that kind of vociferous atmosphere? Loads of people, local rivals, all that usual stuff. And just great. You could feel the excitement. You could feel the tension. You could feel the intensity from the TV. It was bouncing out at you. Galway be happy. I think Mayo will be happy enough as well. I don't see any massive change to the Mayo setup. I don't see any massive kind of alteration. Yes, new individuals. But then again, he finishes with an awful lot of the same old faces, I suppose. Did anyone really jump out at me that would say, wow, that guy is going to be a big player for them come the championship? Maybe a bit early to say. O'Donoghue was excellent. I thought he's a guy who, sometimes I look at him, I've probably been a little bit critical of him a couple of times last year, but then, there's been a few times where he has really led the line. I can't remember what game it was last year. It could have been a Tyrone game where he led the line and he literally got beaten up for about 70 minutes, but he kept coming back and kept coming back for it. And I thought yesterday, if you watch it, obviously, he misses one not too dissimilar to the one he gets literally about 2 or 3 minutes beforehand. It just doesn't come in for him enough on the right hand post. And you're kind of thinking when he gets the opportunity, you're thinking, is he going to slip it? Will he back himself again? And that's what great forwards do. They back themselves every time, and he absolutely nails it. But he had played well during the game. And he led the line for them, and that's what they need, because I think they're a little bit rudderless in that kind of, O'Connor is obviously gone. They have Carr now. They're trying to him obviously in full forward, strong, physical, fast. Obviously he can kick a score, but they're probably just trying to find their way of, are we a big man full forward line team? I'm putting the odd big ball in and long ball, or are we still trying to work it through the hands like we used to? I didn't see any of that real kind of massive pace and massive kind of, abandonment that used to go on with Keegan and say Oisin Mullen, where they would just go past players and look to get on the end of things. I think there was a little bit more shackles on the defence, but that's fine. Listen, they're a team, I suppose, in transition, and McStay and McHale and Rochford have to find their way with them. But again, there's loads of passion still down there and loads of ability, and both teams will be happy, I think, with the result.
When you talk about passion, I don't think any county loves their football as much as Roscommon fans. We get some amount of hate in the comments when we don't give Roscommon their due credit. Davy Burke was in the studio with us a few months ago. I was very impressed by him. Like he oozes enthusiasm. That's one thing I'll say about Davy Burke. And they had that 5-point lead at half-time yesterday against Tyrone. Tyrone whipped it around and ended up leading it by 3 points at some stage in the second half. They've been a yo-yo team, Anthony, in the Division 1 and back down to 2 and back up. So a bit of stability, I guess, is what they need under Davy Burke, and they were impressive yesterday.
Yeah, he'll bring that. I think he will bring what you just said there, enthusiasm. I think he will bring a purpose to them. He'll bring order. He'll bring an awful lot of. I think, and he's also quite an innovative manager. So he'll change things around a bit without having to rip up the script. We all know that Roscommon have good forwards. Okay, so they have guys who can take points. The problem has been what they ship on the far end, and they need to tighten that up. Their midfield it's young, and it's getting there, but it needs to probably be a bit more kind of defensive thinking rather than forward thinking. It's interesting. You see, again, going back to the situation I was just mentioning about the half-backs kicking points, Daly coming up and kicking 3, I think 2 or 3, absolute great scores from half-back. They need that as well. They need fellas to be able to chip in. But that's a great result for them, and that'll give them massive confidence going in. Like, I mean, the first day out, I was kind of with a wry smile. I was reading all the comments. I was thinking, is this just media hype? Excuse the dig, lads. Not at you necessarily, but I was saying to myself, everyone was saying, "Oh, this is a big match. It's a big game for Meath. It's a big game for Clare. It was a big game for everyone." And you're kind of saying, well, it's the first game in the league. Is it really a big game? But it is, because it's no longer, the league is no longer like when you come back a good half a stone overweight and you kind of winter well, and then you kind of ease yourself back into it, and around game 6 of the league, you're saying, right now I'm actually kind of back at the pitch of it and I'm getting ready for championship. The league is literally day 1, bang, go, and there's no more messing around. It's flat out.
Yeah, well, it's been our best competition in Gaelic football, like bar the All-Ireland series from really the semi-finals on, for the last 15 years. You would definitely say, and now all of a sudden, because they managed to make a complete Horlicks of the fucking championship, Division 2 might be the greatest sports competition on earth over the next month. Like, it's like the March Madness, because some teams are going to have their entire season blown up and end up in the Tailteann Cup, and some teams are going to slingshot themselves into a position where they could be All-Ireland quarter-finalists or semi-finalists, or even the winner of the entire championship might have been on view in Croker on Saturday. I mean, I'm not writing Kildare off just yet.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But Division 2, I do say, Division 2 is now ruthless. It is literally, so with the emphasis on the importance of the games is, especially for Division 2, is enormous. And you're right, you have to get a good start. You really, you can paint narratives whatever way you want with Kerry, with Dublin. Dublin were only feeling their way into it. Even with Kildare, I'd say Kildare, Ger, I'd say Glenn Ryan and the team would have focused on this game and said, here is a game we want to get something out of. Dublin last couple of years have started relatively slowly in the league, brought a lot of new fellas in, and they probably should have said to themselves, look, here is an opportunity where we can go and take 2 points off Dublin in Croke Park, and get ourselves propelled forward. And you could see the disappointment in Glenn after the game. You really could. It was palpable that, you could see, terrible start. He was delighted, obviously, that, it didn't kind of run away from them. But, I noticed over the week, I don't think, and maybe this is a prediction that will come back to bite me, but the conditioning of teams, especially the biggest teams, and actually all of the teams, to be fair, but especially the top 10 or 12 teams, the conditioning, where that gap was a number of years ago between the top 4 or 5, and then let's say that next 5 or 6 also rans. And I would include Meath in that, Kildare in that, Roscommon maybe. That has now massively reduced. I looked at a number of the Meath fellas who I would know obviously fairly well, and the conditioning of them and the strength and how they look. And I could even see it in the Kildare team. The conditioning of Kildare, if you always remember, of course you remember, Dublin would just blow you out of daylights in that last 15 minutes. Or they could nearly stick it into 6th gear for 10 minutes, even in the league, and then drop it back and go again and drop it back. I'm not really seeing that anymore. Teams are so well conditioned now that they're able to stick with the top teams. They may not win the games, but they're able to stick that bit more. And it's not through a fault of conditioning or fitness or strength or agility. It may be a fault of football that gets you in the end. But I think the gap has tightened on those things.
Yeah, for sure. Look, we're out of time, Anthony. Great to have you back. The league is back. We're all back. Meath winners, Monaghan losers, Kildare losers. Sure, look.
Buzzing still, though.
There you go.
It's back.
All right. Good stuff, Anthony. Thanks a million for that. It's 9:40 this morning. McIlroy 18 under, Reid 18 under. They're both Reid's just through the 15th. He must have parred that. McIlroy needed a sand save to stay 18 under, so it's going all the way to the wire in Dubai.
Tee shot in a par 3 here. We might as well stay with this for just 10 seconds just to see how Rory does.
While you're doing that, I'll tell you what's on tomorrow's show. Aidan O'Mahony is going to join us. Derek McNamara is going to preview the Six Nations for us. We've got a deadline day, deal or no deal with Phil. McIlroy's ball's disappeared.
Tee shot's not gone well. Like he's in a bunker at the front.
It's not great. Right. We're going to leave you with some Gavin Cummiskey, Michael Verney and John Duggan goodness from the Sunday pay-per-view. Slán.
I'm now for the pay-per-view. We're delighted to be joined by the GAA and horse racing rider with the Irish Independent, Michael Verney, and the soccer correspondent of the Irish Times, Gavin Cummiskey. Michael and Gavin, how's the form today?
Good, John.
Very good, very good. How are you?
Great to see you both. Let's go through the back pages to start. The Sun. So we have Jim set for more men. This is happening apparently. Jim McGuinness is going to be involved in the coaching setup with Down. Fascinating story. And so many Jim McGuinness stories over the years, but this has got legs, this one. This is actually happening, we believe. Casahiro, Andy 0, Man United 3, Reading 1. Andy Carroll sent off as it was a Brazilian fiesta. At Old Trafford as Man United continue their winning run. Anyone else would have copped it. Jurgen, past glories have spared me the axe. Liverpool are just about to kick off against Brighton in the FA Cup with Evan Ferguson starting for Brighton. That's the Sun. We have the Sunday Independent Sport. Up and running, Dublin begin life in the second tier with a victory over Kildare. Six Nations kick off, why we've never had it so good. Arsenal still want Rice despite Caicedo Hunt. Gunners targeting summer move for West Ham midfielder. Roberto De Zerbi's hopeful of keeping Moyes Caicedo at Brighton, but I think it could be a losing battle. It's interesting though that Arsenal and Chelsea have mainly been linked with these players in this transfer window. It's not other clubs, which is, I suppose, indicative of what could be happening. Sport in the Sunday Times supplement. Ireland's rising star Dan Sheehan talks to Peter O'Reilly. Caicedo told to stay away as Arsenal increased bid, and Brazil 3, Reading 1. Casemiro and Fred on target. Anthony man of the match as United advance in the FA Cup. Welsh boss to quit in rugby after a week of shame, says Stephen Jones. So the chief executive of the Welsh Rugby Union will resign. Steve Phillips, actually he has resigned. That story's moved on after that scandal in Wales. We've got the back of the Daily Mail on a Sunday. Brazilian United move to Samba Beach as Casemiro and Fred lead Reading on a merry dance in the FA Cup. And Garth Brooks' concerts help Croke Park record 20 million surplus and turn the tide. Ireland need to break the cycle of Six Nations misery in Cardiff. They haven't won there since 2013. That's what's mainly going on, lads. I'm just going through the other ones. Willie's 4,000th winners in the back of the Sunday Mirror. Casemiro the hero. And Klopp thinks it's all over. Liverpool and City's domination is finished. And we also have the Sunday World. Pool hoping for a bright day. Jurgen Klopp has challenged his players to erase the memories of their Brighton horror show. That was in the league in their FA Cup 4th round tie. Arsenal gonna get Caicedo. Fenton's goal seals Dubs' win. I hope Pool's slump is not terminal, says John Aldridge. And I do believe Ireland will win the Six Nations, writes Mick Galway. Remember, we've got the game against England on St. Patrick's weekend, and also an interesting story in the Sunday Times, which I'll just try and get up here, about Cricket Stadium gets a green light. So Sport Ireland is given the green light by the government to devise plans for the country's first cricket stadium. This is apparently out in the Ireland campus in Abbottstown, following a joint bid by Ireland, England and Scotland to co-host the 2030 Men's T20 World Cup. Michael, I suppose what we're going to start with Can we finish off the saga today in the Sunday papers about Glen and Kilmacud? Probably not.
Probably not. It's amazing.
We're at full time for everyone in Kilmacud, I can tell you that.
We're a week on, and I think the CCCC are only going to meet tomorrow, and there's just been so many moving parts to this. The GA leaving the ball in Glen's court, Glen appealing, Crokes counter appealing. You'd say the decision to fix a replay is probably the most likely outcome. Whether that replay will ever be played, and you probably have maybe your finger on the pulse a bit more, just nearly up around Crokes, but I don't know if this game is ever going to be replayed.
No, I didn't jump on the bandwagon there after not being up there for years just to get in on the All-Ireland. But
you just turn up unannounced with your dictaphone.
Yeah. I think it's, again, I got this second hand, but just from, this relates probably to Glen as well. Everyone involved in that Kilmacud Crokes team, they can't be taking any more time off. They sacrifice Christmas with family. Any one of them who's a parent, it's done, time off. This idea of a replay, it has to be, these are amateur club players. The All-Ireland final, they would have driven towards this. I'm not talking about the sport aspect, I'm talking about the sacrifices you make to be able to play club football for a year. Once the full-time whistle went, it was, there were so many things they'd committed to their families. Can you imagine how much time they're working, how helpful their jobs are? And they're not in jobs that are related to their sport. They're in jobs that are related to their mortgages, you know? So it was over. I imagine, and I think I saw this, did John Fogarty wrote this in the Examiner this week, that if it does go the way of you have to do a replay, there was talk behind the scenes that Crokes would be like, no. So Glen are All-Ireland champions, but
take a cut back.
They've won an All-Ireland and they've celebrated an All-Ireland. And again, to put this back in a sporting context, I was out in Abbottstown this week. Couldn't see the cricket patch actually being built yet, but I was out there for an FAI gathering for, they're actually talking about the Women's World Cup. They're doing a media briefing, and they were also doing a media briefing ahead of the start of the League of Ireland with Mark Scanlon, and it was very interesting, very good. And afterwards, there was a bit of a Q&A, and we asked them, what would you do if this happened in FAI Cup final, for example, or something even maybe a bit lower down, something that was more amateur or whatever. And they said, well, for starters, there's a mechanism in place for the FAI to take control, as opposed to what the GAA did when they put it all on Glen.
The GAA could have taken control.
Reputationally, that is so damaging outside of the GAA for Gaelic games in Ireland. When you look outside of the country and you go, your showcase event is now a joke. You know.
But maybe the GAA's argument is, if we get involved from the get-go ourselves, we got to then arbitrate every bun fight.
Okay, well we framed the question for the FAI, for the person who makes the decisions. What would you do? Would you let that happen? They were like, no. We've mechanisms in place for the disciplinary arm of the FAI to take control of this situation and not put it on the team that lost. Like, when you look at it, because they're amateur players and if so much commitment would a replay, so much would go into replay. Most of it's impossible. Some of them are in America. Shane Walsh is gone, I think, is he? So that's your best player gone. Lots of lads are gone because of probably just childcare more than anything else. So for them, just put in a whopper fine, fair enough. Take responsibility for the fourth or fifth officials for where they made mistakes. And if Glen appeal, and if the letter of the law can get them to a replay, well and good. I think just give them the trophy. It's too damaging reputationally for it to go back in.
Is the answer here not the fine? Fine it, and that sorts it.
Big time. And then wait for the appeals if they come.
But Glen actually, maybe in a way, they might have felt that they had to throw this back in the GA. Maybe they don't want to replay, but maybe they felt that they had to throw back the objection to the GA. And if they find Kilmacud, because it's always about depending on the circumstances, so you're actually not setting a precedent, then it's sorted.
Yeah, it was such a... And it wasn't a response from the GA, but it was such a watery thing to do, in my opinion, just to pass the ball into somebody else's court. Like when Offaly and Clare was blown up early by Jimmy Cooney in 1998, there was a replay ordered quickly the next day. There was no appeals or anything like that. People saw, and those the
Offaly lads on the pitch though did help.
That did help. Now, to be fair, but. There was a problem. We have to fix the problem. We have to come out and address it. And I just did. It was clear for anybody to see that it was 16, technically 17 on the pitch, 16 having an involvement in that final play. You come out and make a decision. Maybe it hasn't been done before. And I don't agree with that. It every bun fight or every extra sub coming on, that all these things need to be investigated. This is the biggest showcase in the club season, and we had a farcical conclusion to it. And to me, it could have been nipped in the bud very, very early by the powers that be. Shane McGrath just writes in the Mail today, I thought was interesting. He says, the argument is that there is a GA way of doing business and that this must be adhered to at the cost of credibility, confidence and the integrity of its competitions. This is it's a feeble response, basically. The fundamentals of this case haven't changed and only need brief restating. One team enjoyed an unfair numerical advantage over the other for the last play of the game. That goes against regulations, but it is also against the concept of fair play that even a small child could grasp. Like, everybody can see the problem here, and the GAA have made no attempt to fix the problem. And to me, it's just hugely disappointing. I'm a GAA man first and foremost, and it's a poor representation on our governing body and the leaders within the GAA that a resolution wasn't made quickly, and they come, like, it's basic PR. Come out and control the narrative, make a decision, and we move on.
Basic leadership as well.
I wonder though, if the club finals are on Patrick's Day and you've all the leagues going on at the same time, would it be as high profile? The thing about it is you had the split season demanded, and the clubs then get much more high profile scrutiny, as we saw with the FASA Stuart 10 Harps game, and now you see with the club final, everybody's looking at it, and now this has become a live line topic.
Yeah, it's almost
like, made it to live line yet, did it?
No, I suppose that's more of a phrase.
No, I just thought it was. I was like, Doug, please God, if it does, I'm done.
To be credit to live line.
It's just very damaging and very embarrassing is what I felt looking at it for the association.
So when I'm reading the Garth Brooks story, the back of one of the papers there today, and I'm thinking to myself, the amount of money they're making. Why can't we have a situation in the GAA, Michael, where you have formalised substitutions like you'd have in professional sport, where you have the person on the sideline, the fourth official holding up a board, and that they're bringing a number off and bringing a number on, and until that is concluded, play cannot resume? Yeah,
it normally would be the case, John, to be honest with you. It normally would be the case that somebody's coming on. I've been a sub coming in. You are not let in until somebody comes off, generally, because they run the risk of having 16 or 17 players on the field. I'm not sure what happened, but...
Is there no double lock, though? Is there not another lock you can put on, aircraft door style, onto it?
Maybe so, but like if you have a fourth official and you have maybe a referee's coordinator there as well, like it wasn't for an absence of bodies, it wasn't for an absence of communication between all the officials that were there, and like they obviously knew straight away after the 45 that Darren Mulligan hadn't come off. Okay, there's a bit of a precedent, and Finlay McMahon wrote it in our paper yesterday. Rob Henley had a 45 to level the 2021 All-Ireland semi-final against Dublin. He kicked it. Just as he was kicking it, the referee blew because there was an extra Mayo player coming onto the pitch. So it's actually, he got to replay the kick because there was an extra player on the field. But he called it there and then. Henley hit the kick. The second time, it went over and it went extra time. But that's really what should have happened. They would have realised the mistake, I'm sure, pretty quickly. If Mullen came off after the 45, they would have realised, OK, we'd 16 players on the pitch here, retake the 45. And I think, I don't know, what do you think, Gav? I think everyone would be happy in that instance if, you know, you've got to, they had an advantage for this one, we've realised it, we take it again. And if they score a goal, they win. If they don't, they lose.
Yeah, but the fact that a week later we're talking about it is a leadership vacuum. That's what I see here. And it's like, I'm not having a go at the GAA there also, because their leadership and the way they go about their business is really impressive. But in this instance, I just can't see any other sporting organisation letting it linger in the wind for as long as they have. And like, that's the problem here, you know. And it's doing no doubt. We should be halfway into the league has started. We should be rattling away about there was a classic between Galway and Mayo last night, and we're not, because of same old. As I was saying to Michael on the way in, I felt like we were back in 2004 and we're dealing with Tyrone and Armagh going to war with each other, not on the pitch for about 5 minutes and then off the pitch for about 3 weeks because they had to get to the DRA. Like, have they not learned anything in the last 20 years? That's the administrative disappointments I'd have.
Isn't it amazing though that you could be so commercially savvy, let's say with the Gareth Brooks concerts and the amount of revenue they're able to bring in, and commercially the GAA are really on top of it, you'd have to say. And then I don't know if
they're also on top of it in terms of their practices. So when you compare them to other sporting organisations and how they've been run over the last 20 years.
But then you look at, you know, the lack of reaction to this and just letting it carry on for a week, and God only knows how much longer it's going to carry on.
Joe Bradley, the only way to get rid of the stain is for teams to do it again in the Sun Independent.
He's been blowing that trumpet now for a few days, hasn't he?
Yeah, well, he's kept to his principles, including on this station. I just want to quote this. Stevie Mercer from the Glen Club rang me after I did a radio interview to say I'm 1 to 5 to win the Pat Convery Memorial Clubman of the Year award. This will be the first time in its history the prestigious trophy has been presented to an outsider. I will, of course, have to do what our own Colin McGuigan did when he was awarded a medal for bravery by the Queen. He sent it back. It's a northern thing. In his early 20s, Stevie emigrated to the US. On the eve of his departure, there was an Irish wake from the Glen Clubhouse. At the very end of the night, Stevie became very sentimental and took the mic with tears running down his face. He pointed at the crowd with voice heavy with emotion and said, "You're my people. You will always be in my heart," which got a great ovation. And Stevie's very popular. Off he went like Dick Whittington, only to return a month later. The poor fellow was homesick. I don't think he's left the parish since. So, bit of humour in the whole thing. And to be fair, like Joe Brody's pointed to Clare and Offaly, as you said there. He's pointed to Dunboyne, Navan and Mahoney's like precedents and technical errors, and in these cases, replays have happened.
Yeah, I'd say a replay is the most likely decision. I still find it hard to believe that it's actually going to happen, especially with if you look at the
Want these lads to hold. They've moved on with their lives. Every single one of them. They're in off season now. Every single player. Sure, two of the Glen lads played for Derry.
That's right. Yeah, Ethan Doherty and Conor Glass played for Derry yesterday. 6 days later, they obviously want to move on from it. I'd say as well.
I want to move on from it.
Yeah. 53106, Fintan Malahide. A fine will be a joke. Crokes going to raise the fine from a few big donors. Replay or forfeit the title is the way it should be. And John and Cork sacrifices part of sport, and the taking part compensates in bucket loads. If you can't stand the heat, get out of the kitchen instead of just moaning about the heat. Just talking about the fact that the players are martyrs message that's continuously promoted by the media and the GA is sickening. The poor players. The players get a lot out of it, and they don't enjoy it. They should stop.
They do get a lot out of it. They do enjoy it. But there are a fair whack of sacrifices too, and it's not just their personal sacrifices. There's a spin-off of sacrifices that other people make for them as well. And if you've made them, you'll realise how significant they are. And I wouldn't underplay what they do and the sacrifices they make.
We have Cork 3 points, me the goal in the Allianz National Football League. So Paul Kerrigan will update us on that shortly. You saw an article also in the Sunday Independent about ladies Gaelic football and the availability of pitches, Gavin.
Yeah, I'll give Nadine Doherty deserves a bit of credit. Is in the first 6 pars are kind of the best way to get women's sport into national newspapers, as you point out how they're being treated, but then the rest of the article is a really good preview. So she drags you in really cleverly, and then she actually gives you the real meat that should be the headline that probably won't get as many readers, but she does a very good job. Very simply, she points out Waterford ladies were forced to play their first game of the 2023 Ladies National Football League in Piltown, which is in Kilkenny. Waterford had been training there. They couldn't get a pitch in their own county. Now, that's as strong an indictment as you can get, really.
But is Welsh Park now not at the moment being redeveloped?
Yeah. Where are the men playing? Are the men playing in Kilkenny?
Is it Farfield?
Yeah.
Oh, they got the Thurles.
Yeah, they are actually, yeah.
Yeah. But sorry, I apologise then, but she moves down then and she talks about how Meath and Dublin met and how their match was put up on the training pitch. Last year Meath and Dublin played in front of thousands of supporters in Park Talton. Last weekend the same teams played in Dublin City University, separated from a few hundred supporters by a perimeter defence. Parnell Park was deemed unplayable, but the game should have been moved to a suitable and well-sourced venue with parking, a stand and toilets for supporters. The journey towards parity took a disappointing step backwards. It's like we're talking again about parking, a stand and toilets for the Women's National League. And again, Nadine, opening 6 pars, nails it. Goes, look, there's a lot of talk. There was a lot of talk in Congress about moves towards equality and everything, but practically there's major problems still.
But is that always going to be the case unless you have a merged situation with the GA, the ladies football and Camogie all under one umbrella?
They are, like a lot of the time, they're feeding off the scraps. You're waiting to see where male fixtures are, and then you're trying to get the second best. Like, I think the fixtures for the LGFA fixtures came out the Monday before last, and 11 of the 14 games were TBC, like where the venues were actually going to be 5 days, including Dublin Meath. They didn't actually have a
Parnell Park, was that not available?
That was unplayable at the moment. I think
Croke Park, once again, you had the club finals.
Yeah, I think four of the fixtures in the LGFA, the first round, were played in the county grounds, and that'll kind of show you how difficult it is to get them. But listen, there's some of the men's teams are even probably struggling to get in there just with conditions and how much, a game could destroy a pitch at this time of the year. That's not making any excuse. It's just particularly difficult.
That's the argument against double headers, because the male-female double header thing has been quite effective for, but again, the easy argument there for them is, well, we put the women's match on first, they'll cut up the pitch for the men, or vice versa for that matter. But so that seems to be the only thing. But the double headers thing, it just seems like the easiest way of making sure that they're given the respect that they should have earned by now. Should have earned a long time ago. Just, I gotta go, and the FAI. I'm here to say how great the FAI is all day today. But Roy Bart taking that step down and basically doing it to ensure there was gender equality or a move towards gender equality in the FAI board is a statement that it wasn't pure, it wasn't showmanship, it wasn't anything. Now he said it's not just that. It's like, I think you should leave a board after 3-4 years. But the chairman, the strongest voice on the FAI board for the last while, the guy that they put out every time there was a crisis, is stepping down because there's not enough females managing the game in this country. That's as strong as it. That's top down leadership right there. There it is, for all to see.
Let's check in with Gaelic games, by the way, in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, because Cork are playing Meath at the moment in Division 2 of the Football League. Fascinating to see how John Cleary and Colm O'Rourke are going to get on with their counties. Paul Carrigan, how's it going there?
Very good, John. We've a game that's kind of after coming into life there the last 5 minutes or so. Cork on top, probably a bit more economical with the possession, and have just clicked into gear the last couple of minutes. And Matthew Costello responded there with a great point for Meads, our first of the game. So it's 6 points to 1-1. Stephen Sherlock, couple of early frees, and almost had a goal chance. I think Cork are pressing up on. Could be a goal here from Matty Taylor. Oh yes, great save by Harry Hogan in goal. Matty Taylor's after getting a point himself, but he was set up there by Sean Powter on the run. But as I said, Cork's kick-out press is
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with